for the masses.
Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army.
If the game is rigged, change the game. Game changer.
I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
This is Fade to Black with your host, Jimmy Church, on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, the Global Radio Alliance.
I need your help to get to the year 1985.
You're listening to Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Network.
Well. Good evening. Fade to Black. Bespoke Radio for the masses. Yeah. How you doing? Today's Wednesday, August 11th, 2021. 224 days into the new year. Only 141 days left. We are live from a bunker somewhere in the middle of nowhere. A total undisclosed location. Yeah. But it is beautiful. Yeah, man. How you doing? I would like to welcome everybody listening all around the world, all across the United States. Hither and thither, to and fro, back and forth, up and down, east and west, north and south, far and near. This is Fade to Black for KJCR, the Game Changer Network, and KGRA, the planet. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. What is cracking, everybody? How you doing? All right. Big night tonight on the show. Lots of things going on. But the big news, kids, Dr. Robert M. Schoch. Best name ever. I swear. Robert Schoch is with us. Old friend of the show and such a great guy. And he's coming by tonight. And now, his new book is out. It is the revised and expanded edition of Forgotten Civilization. I've got my own copy right here. Lots of updated pictures, color. It's a great book. And so we're going to be discussing that tonight and a whole lot more. Very excited. Always great. We've done so many shows with Robert over the years. And it's just great when he stops by. And it was funny because I called him a little bit ago and picks up, "Hi, Jimmy." I said, "Hey, did you know that you are my favorite geologist?" He laughed. He's the only geologist that I know. And not only, how cool is that, but what he has done for this community, his research, rocking the boat. And I've had so many seminal moments with Robert over the years. I mean, just great moments. And but I remember, and we were actually, I was talking about this last week with a guest on the show. I don't remember who the guest was, but maybe you guys remember. And but there was a moment I was hosting a panel, and we had a ton of people in front of us, like 2,000 people, 2,500, big crowd. And I asked Robert a question, and I remember on this panel we had Graham Hancock and we had Robert Bivol and Robert and Schoch, and I'm just trying to think of who was on this panel. It was an extraordinary panel. But anyway, so when Robert speaks, right, and I remember as he started to say something, as he started to answer, but I watched Graham lean in, and he's listening to Robert. I watched Bivol lean in, and Robert said these words. He goes, "In academia, You never say the A word. And I was like, and I immediately thought aliens. And Robert picked up on that. He turns, and I don't mean aliens. I mean Atlantis. But I'm going to do it tonight. I'm going to talk about it. It was just really funny. And that is what he has always been to this community. He will take the chances, but he will speak what he believes. He does the research, and he follows the research. And that is one of the things that we can count on Dr. Robert Schoch to do for us. So tonight, Robert Schoch is here. Also, tomorrow night is Fader Night with open lines all night long. We're going to do that. Also, going on right now, there's a couple of things. Right now, as I speak to you, we are broadcasting from the Paul Hellyer Auditorium over at the Making Contact campus, doing a test run tonight to make sure that the technology works. And I just got the text in with a screenshot saying loud and clear. The auditorium is empty, but I think it's probably Mark Sims and Captain Ron and maybe a few others. But hello to everybody over there, and I hope that it looks great and everything is perfect. So we're doing a dry run because tomorrow night, I want everybody to get signed up. And if you've already signed up, and many of you Fadernauts already have, you can go over tomorrow night to the Making Contact campus, venture your way into the auditorium, and we're going to do Fader Night tomorrow night live from there. So get your avatar on and head over to the campus tomorrow night, and we will be doing another test run. But tomorrow night's going to be more official because I'm going to announce it and tell everybody to get over there. I didn't do that tonight because we're testing. But everything apparently is working. Hey, Ron, hit me in text and say it's still good. I've got all that going. Okay, so that's what's going on. We have Making Contact, that conference over at makingcontact.com. Promo code is JimmySave100. It's a 5-day event. Okay, so it's August 18th, 19th, 20th, 21st, 22nd. And I believe I'll be over there on Saturday, the 21st. I'll confirm everything with all of you. Okay, so that's what's going on, makingcontact.com. Right after that, in September 17th and 18th and 19th, huge event also with the Conscious Life Expo. We will be broadcasting. I'll host. This is in person. Be hosting from Los Angeles, but we are also doing London at the same time. So over at the Hilton Hotel in London is the Conscious Life Expo going on over there. So we wrap here, hand things over to London, where they continue to carry the torch. And if you can't be live with us here in LA, which I get that, everything is going to be streaming, and you can do that as well. And if you're over in London listening to me right now, get your stream on, and you can watch us over in the United States here in Los Angeles, California. All of that is over at ConsciousLifeExpo.com for your tickets and info, and the promo code for that is simply Jimmy, and you can get your discounts and get your tickets. Okay, so we've got a busy year end coming up, because after that, in November, is Starworks, and you can go to StarWorksUSA.com for your tickets and info for that. That is at the Aquarius Hotel and Casino in Laughlin, Nevada. Okay, follow me on Twitter at JChurchRadio. The Sandbox, of course, is hashtag F2B. You can go hang out over there in YouTube. I'm just jumping over. Jimmy does I don't know what that means, but yeah, I wish I could host London. That would be really, really cool. So anyway, I just jumped over to YouTube. All right, welcome everybody. Let's get straight to the breaking news. I got a crazy breaking news day today, and I'm going to start with Russia. There are two types of fires raging across Siberia as I speak to you, the kind that they are fighting and the others that they are just allowing to burn. That's because Siberia is so vast that huge fires together are larger than the fires in Greece, Turkey, Italy, the United States, and Canada combined. Russia is fighting more than 190 forest fires that have forced widespread evacuations and is sending smoke up to the North Pole. It's absolutely incredible what they're dealing with over there. Now, there is a star like our sun, sort of. It is called LP40-365. This star, LP40-365, is streaking against the grain here in our Milky Way. That's right. It's going backwards across and out and exiting our Milky Way at, wait for it, 2 million miles per hour. That's right. The star moves so quickly that it's headed out of our galaxy for good. It's not coming back, which astronomers have taken as evidence that the metallic explorer, now, most, like our sun, helium, hydrogen core, this is a metallic star. And it was launched by a cosmic catastrophe, blasted out by a supernova. It's absolutely incredible. They're tracking it now, but it will soon be gone. Now, announced today, Accenture, the global consulting firm, has been hit by the Lockbit ransomware gang, according to Cybercriminal Group's website. Accenture's encrypted files will be published by the group on the dark web today, unless the company pays up a ransom. And all of this according to Lockbit, the criminal enterprise. Now, Accenture immediately contained the matter and isolated the affected servers and fully restored effective systems from their backups. There was no impact on Accenture's operations or their clients' systems. Lockbit is kind of bummed. Now, also, I'm going to talk more about this in just a minute because hackers have stolen $600 million in cryptocurrency from the decentralized finance platform Poly Network. Again, I'll say it. $600 million. Now, following the hack, Poly Network established several addresses to which it said the attacker could return the money. They wanted the money back. They were saying, hey, you're stealing from people like you. These are people that are promoting cryptocurrency and helping the world. Now, it appears that the hacker is now cooperating. As of 7:47 a.m. this morning, Eastern Standard Time, Poly Network said that it had received about $4.7 million back. Now, it was not immediately clear who was behind the hack, but by noon today, much more money, about $261 million had been returned. Once the hack had gained the world's attention today, there was virtually no way for the hacker to safely withdraw the funds because every transaction is recorded and traceable. The funds are sitting frozen in a blacklisted private wallet. Absolutely incredible. Let's get this show cracking. Happy birthday to today. All right, ladies. Chris Hemsworth. Chris Hemsworth today is 38. All right. Yeah, he's Thor. Joe Rogan today is 54. Steve Wozniak, the man who changed the world, today is 71. Eric Carmen, one of my favorite singers of all time, today is 72. The Raspberries, right? Go all the way. Man, I watched every video version of that song today that I could find. And also, of course, Solo, the huge hit All By Myself. Joe Jackson today is 67. Is she really going out with him? I love that song. Stepping Out, huh? Today, Joe Jackson is 67. And also, this is for Mark from Dallas. Charlie Sexton today is 53. And, of course, you need to go check out his band. It was phenomenal, Archangels. Our dead guy's birthday today is Stan Kessler. Stan Kessler, 1928 to 2020, died at the age of 92. Stan was a record producer and a songwriter whose career began at Sun Studios in Memphis. He co-wrote several of Elvis Presley's early recordings and played guitar and bass on hit records by Carl Perkins and Jerry Lee Lewis. As a producer, his successful records included, are you ready? Wooly Bully by Sam Sham and the Pharaohs. He retired from the music industry in the early 1990s and lived in Bartlett, Tennessee. I lived in Bartlett, Tennessee. He died on October 26, 2020 from bone cancer. Stan was 92 years old. On this day in history, in 1984, it went down when President Reagan jokes about bombing Russia on a hot mic. That's right. He did, saying, and I quote, "My fellow Americans, I am pleased to tell you today that I have signed legislation that will outlaw Russia forever. We begin bombing in 5 minutes." End quote. You gotta love Ronald. This is amazing. All right, here you go. Fader fact. 8% of Americans believe, if needed, they could take down an elephant in an unarmed fight. This was published in a YouGov poll this year in May of 2021. The same 8% also think they could take out a gorilla, they could take out a grizzly bear, and they could take out a lion. Crazy Americans. Tonight, very special guest Robert M. Schoch is here. We're going to be talking about his new book. It is just released, the updated, revised edition of Forgotten Civilization. Tomorrow night is Fader night with open lines all night long, and we're going to be broadcasting from the Making Contact. Yeah, okay, we're still good. The Making Contact campus at the Paul Hellyer Auditorium. All right, that's going down tomorrow night. Oh, we're going to be doing it from here. I'm saying if you've signed up for the Making Contact Conference and you've got your avatar, and if you haven't signed up yet, you need to go and get signed up. The promo code is JimmySave100, all uppercase. All right, save $100. All right, go, get registered, get your avatar ready, and come and check out Fader Night from the Paul Hellyer Auditorium. All right. River Moon Coffee. It's hot. 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 Right? You know what I'm talking about. That's the way I do my coffee. It's a really good pick, Eric Stitt. Thank you for that, my friend. All right. Sometimes we just have to review things. We have to. And I'm the guy to do it. So today, I'm going to circle back and talk to you about entropy. Not the physics version, although it's complex and can be filled with a lot of gobbledygook and math. No, I'm not going to talk about that. You know, that version with the second law of thermodynamics, disorder, and the unavailability of energy. You know, that's still entropy. No, I'm going to talk to you about the entropy in our world, your world. And any physicist will tell you that actually they are one and the same. What is entropy in your world? Well, check this out. Picture this. A child's bedroom. Nice and neat the day you move into the house, but eventually it turns into total chaos. You clean it up and back to a disaster area. That's entropy. Everything starts out simple and it ends very badly. That's entropy. Put that in your mind. Doesn't matter what it is. You start a new job, everything is cool. Your first day, everything is simple, and eventually it gets all messed up. 2 years later, you get fired or you quit. It just spins out of control. That's entropy. Now, I gave you a couple of doses of entropy in the breaking news segment earlier. One of them is cryptocurrency. Cryptocurrency, the whole thing started out so simple, right? Bitcoin. Cruised along for years. Nobody even noticed, right? Just in the background. Today, the crypto world is very complicated. Yes, you've heard about all those mining centers. Servers stacked to the ceiling, overheating. The exchanges with all of the different types of crypto. Every day there's a new crypto, right? It's totally insane, and nobody can control it. Not governments, not banks, not you. It's so whacked out that yesterday a hacker just walked away with $600 million in Dosh. Like it was nothing. And the hacker said they did it for... Wait for it. They did it for fun. $600 million. Crypto started so simple, and it's gotten too complex. It's headed for an entropic meltdown. It'll happen eventually. It's entropy. We also just had another ransomware attack. We've had so many lately that it's hard to keep up with them. Right? But all of this was inevitable. Remember, and never forget this, but 25 short, little, teeny, tiny years ago, nothing was running on the internet. Nothing. Let me say it again. Nothing. Today, the entire world is connected to the net. The world, all of it, runs on the internet. Everything. Your bank, your money, your job, your house, TV, phone, car, your food, the military, all transportation, electricity, water, infrastructure, smart everything, Tesla, planes, trains, boats. Your mail, your bills, your health, schools, private and commercial buildings, politics, police, churches, art, music, all entertainment, sports, every single thing that you can think of, all of it. The world and beyond, space, satellites, everything is now connected and run on the net. There are no exceptions. 25 years ago, there wasn't ransomware taking down the meat industry or shutting down our gas pipelines. It couldn't happen. Nothing ran on the net. Right? Today, it's an everyday occurrence. 25 years ago, our world was a very simple place. Today, it's so complex that nobody knows what's going on or how to deal with it. Disaster will strike. Things will come unglued because they have to. It's the law. This is entropy. Power outages because it's too hot outside, too many air conditioners running on high, and an electrical grid that is too complex and interconnected. The whole system melts down, right? Or the opposite. Maybe it's too cold outside. Remember Texas last year? That was entropy doing its dance. A few years ago, I watched the world's internet traffic in action from a special site where you can go and see the flow, the hubs. It's animated and it's real time. And I thought to myself, as I'm watching this, and it's great, right? I'm watching it, I'm thinking to myself, entropy is going to strike right here one day. All of the world's everything is flowing right here, right in front of me, right now. It's too much. We have recklessly taken a gamble without any consideration of a backup plan. There was no special manual to read if everything goes wrong. That's right, there's no boss. Nobody knows. And if it does go sideways, and it will, there'll be no way to talk about it. There'll be no way to hear about it. Entropy will just do its final dance and the lights are going to go out. Forever. You see, this isn't the physics version of entropy. This is your version. And yes, when things get too messy in your kid's room, what do? You yell. You yell your entropic scream, and things get placed back in order. The bed gets made. When entropy puts an end to the internet, nobody will hear your cries for help. Because there's going to be 7.5 billion people to drown you out. Guaranteed. Yeah. It's the way it is. It's entropy. It's the law of the universe. You start out simple, and everything comes undone. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. This is Fade to Black. And hey, I'm just here to say, this is the way that it is. It is. It is. Tonight, Robert M. Schoch is here. We're going to talk about that new book of his, Forgotten Civilization. All of that and much more. Maybe we'll get some entropy in. Yeah. Happy dreams tonight, folks. Tomorrow night is Fader Night with open lines all night long. I'm your host, Jimmy Church, on the Game Changer Network and KGRA, The Planet. This is Fade to Black, and I'll be right back with our guest, Robert Schoch. Stay with me.
This is Nicole Church, daughter of you-know-who, and you're listening to Fade to Black on JimmyChurchRadio.com and the Game Changer Network.
You're listening to Jimmy Church, Fade to Black.
Fade to Black will now pause for alien identification.
The station that talks the net. KGRA Radio.
Introducing the Game Changer blend from River Moon Coffee that delivers a customized blend made specifically for the Fadernauts. If the game is rigged, change the game. It's a bolder cup with some bite. Game Changer is the coffee of choice for those that prefer an organic dark roast that is slightly lighter and milder, but it's still dark. With wild notes of pecans and chocolate with a rich, balanced, full-bodied cup that is roasted to perfection for a great coffee to start your day, as an after-dinner coffee or anywhere in between. Artisan, small batch roasted to perfection. USDA certified organic, all River Moon coffee is freshly roasted and packaged in the USA. Just go to rivermooncoffee.com or click on the banners over on our site and use the promo code F2BBLEND for 15% off of your order today. rivermooncoffee.com.
This is the only way forward.
This is Fade to Black. Make contact. KGRARadio.com.
This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black, and you can get our podcast for just $2 per month. All you have to do is click on the podcast banner over at jimmychurchradio.com.
Hi, folks. It's troubling times, and fear is pushing emotions, which in turn pushes health the wrong direction. Do you ever get an ache because life is uneasy? Try Life Change Tea at getthetea.com. Life Change Tea works on your digestive tract, helping to move food through quicker and comfortably so your health is spot on. Life Change Tea may not help with world issues, but it will help with your digestive issues. A glass a day helps keep the intruders away. So, change your life today. Log on to getthetea.com. That's getthetea.com. If your health game is off, get on by ordering Life Change Tea. Getthetea.com. And while you're on our site, look around at the great non-GMO organic supplements. And if you're a sales shopper, go to our specials page and see what's for you. I've been drinking the tea for 12 years and I'm sure glad for its health benefits. Again, that's getthetea.com. Getthetea.com. The tea that makes you go.
Fadernauts, when you think about the future of our country and where we're headed, do you wonder about the food supply? I do. Disruptions in the food supply chain could be disastrous, and they usually occur with little warning. That's why the smartest thing you can do today is to stockpile emergency food, water, and other essentials. I personally recommend My Patriot Supply. They're the nation's largest emergency preparedness company, serving millions of customers for more than a decade. In fact, they're the only source my family trusts for our preparedness plan. You should too. Right now, save 20% off a full 4-week supply of delicious meals that provide 2,000 calories a day. Saving 20% helps too, doesn't it? Especially now. So go to preparewithjimmy.com and get ready. That's preparewithjimmy.com. There's no time to lose. Do it now.
9 out of 10 geneticists agree.
Fade to Black is not your father's radio show on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, The Planet.
Hi, this is Rob Reiner from Anvil, and you're listening to JimmyChurchRadio.com.
What's up? I'm Chris. What up? This is Kyle Manson. You're listening to Jimmy Church Radio.
All right, welcome back. Fade to Black. I am your host, Jimmy Church. Tonight, Dr. Robert M. Schoch. I just call him Robert around here, but he's joining us tonight. We're going to talk about the new revised and expanded edition of his best-selling book, Forgotten Civilization, that and much more. The great thing about having Robert on the show, we can take this in all directions, and we're going to do that tonight. He is a full-time faculty member at the College of General Studies at Boston University, all the way back since 1984. He earned his Ph.D. in Geology and Geophysics at Yale University, his M.S. and M.Phil in Geology and Geophysics from Yale, as well as his degrees in Anthropology, a B.A. in Geology, B.S. from George Washington University. We all know it was in the early 1990s when Dr. Schoch, along with John Anthony West, recast the date of the Great Sphinx of Egypt from 2600 BC back to around 10,500 BC, possibly beyond, by demonstrating that the monument had been heavily eroded by water despite the fact that its location on the edge of the Sahara has endured hyper-arid climatic conditions for the past 5,000 years. Now, Dr. Schoch revealed to the world that mankind's history is greater and older than previously believed, and we thank him for that. I would like to welcome back to Fade to Black our good friend, Dr. Robert M. Schoch. Robert, good evening, my friend.
Good evening.
I mean, it's been too long. It's been way too long. And, you know, this is the thing. For years, you and I, every year, a couple times a year, hanging out, you, Katie, and I, having a great time, and it just the brakes got pumped on all of that last year. We're not going to get into any of that, but it's so great to have you back on the show.
Well, thank you.
That's it. Just thank you. That's it. That's all I got.
Well, thank you. Yeah. No, I'm really pleased to be back, but the problem is that I'm reflecting as you're saying that this whole COVID pandemic and all that's been going on. It's just been insane. It's really messed up so many things, from travel to conferences to us getting together. So what can I say? But on the other hand, this is almost nothing compared to what it could be. And I just heard you. I tuned in just was listening in the background while you were talking about entropy and all that, and the internet, and you're absolutely right. A quarter century ago, nothing was connected to the internet. Everything is connected to internet now, and where I'm going with this is that the subtitle of my book, and this is a new subtitle for Forgotten Civilization for the second revised and expanded edition, the new subtitle is New Discoveries on the Solar-Induced Dark Age. And as you well know, and I think probably a lot of listeners know, Katie actually came up with the term, Katie, my wife, of solar-induced dark age, but that describes so well what happened almost 12,000 years ago with a solar outburst that devastated that early cycle of civilization. Now, if we have even a minor solar outburst, just a little coronal mass ejection that hits us directly, or a little EMP, or what they call a proton solar event, we're doomed.
We're
doomed. The whole internet will go down. The grids will go down.
Yes.
So yeah, I'm sorry if I was reflecting there as you were beginning to introduce me as to how vulnerable we really are. So I don't mean to start on a negative note whatsoever, but
yeah, well,
this is the times we're in.
This was probably 5 or 6 years ago, and I had this weird thought pop into my head. And that is, what if I get up in the morning, I go downstairs, I go in to the kitchen to make a pot of coffee, start my day, and the power's out, I don't have coffee, and then I go and check, maybe check my phone to see if there's a power outage in the area, and then my phone's not working, and at that moment, there is no way for me, if anything like that went down, there's no way for me to turn on the TV and get the news. There's no way for me to there wouldn't be anything. Now, and this was the thought that I had, and I had mentioned this to the audience, which is, how long does it take from that moment before pandemonium is in the streets? How long does it take? Because nobody's getting news. Nobody knows what's happening. And how long do we go from that moment of peace of me standing at my kitchen window, right, wondering why I don't have coffee, to chaos? How long?
Yeah.
How long? Is it a day? Is it 2 days?
We really don't know. That would be an incredible, should we say, social experiment. But it could happen. And I mean, not anyone's guess is equal, but because there are people who study such things. And from my study and, part of the book, it's interesting because the title is Forgotten Civilization, and I'm referring primarily in many ways to ancient civilization, this ancient, forgotten, earlier cycle of civilization.
Right.
And again, I don't mean to be negative, but we could be a forgotten civilization in the future. So the book talks about, what could happen to us in the immediate future too. And getting back to the pandemonium, I don't think it's going to take very long at all. I think we're talking at max a couple of hours, a few hours, when people really realize what's happened.
Yep.
If that happens, say the whole grid system goes down throughout a good chunk of the United States, just the United States, just part of the United States, much less around the world, if we had a major solar outburst or something else. I mean, we are just so vulnerable. That's one of the themes of the book, that we are incredibly vulnerable. And we've got this incredible hubris that somehow we're better than anything else. We're the best that's ever been. I actually don't believe that. Technologically, we've got great technology, but it's only great as long as it works.
And this is the thing, and it's not about, spreading fear or it's not about that. It's that we have the ability to protect these systems and to go and make sure that we have a plan B. Right now, if it happened today, it would not be a good thing. But we have the ability. We have the ability to protect.
We have the ability, and I want to be very clear for myself, and I'm not putting anyone else down, but I think that the most important thing is that we as a society, we need to think about these things. We need to make the very small investments when it comes right down to it, as a societal level, at a governmental level, at a community level, very small investments relative to other things to harden the grid, as the terminology is used, to protect with, for instance, Faraday cages. There are different things you can do to make ourselves less vulnerable, to have redundancy. We were talking about the pandemic. I brought up the issue of the pandemic. Maybe we don't want to go into that too much, but I think one of the lessons we've learned from the pandemic is that we're incredibly vulnerable when it comes to supply and demand, because so many things have been centralized, computer chips coming from only one country, for instance, or one place, even little things like medical supplies, when those the one place that's producing X, Y, or Z goes down, or the supply chains collapse, transportation, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, we have really boxed ourselves in. We need redundancy. We need to have backup systems. Part of the problem, I think, with modern society is that there has been this trend over the last 2, 3, 4 decades to be more efficient, less redundancy, just-on-time delivery, et cetera, et cetera. But actually, redundancy serves an incredibly good purpose, especially in times of crisis.
Yeah, there's no question about it. And it's redundancy on everything. Redundancy on water, electricity, food, or
exactly
tires,
and redundancy
whatever.
In different formats. So what I'm specifically referring to, and you were talking about cryptocurrency in the first half hour, if I when I listened in, cryptocurrency, that's all electronic. Where's the redundancy there? And don't say, well, the redundancy is that's in lots of different computers. Yes, I understand that. But if all the computers go down, if that entire system goes down, where's the redundancy? Versus different types of accounting systems where you actually have paper that is stored away safely somewhere. If you have even computers that are stored away off the grid, off the internet, off the World Wide Web, deep in caves. I sound like a prepper, but I'm not trying to, but deep in caves where they would be protected from, say, solar events or other catastrophes on the surface, but totally disconnected. That's, I think, part of our problem, too, that we are so interconnected that it's like a virus, and we're dealing with viruses now. They can spread very, very quickly.
Now, you're a professor at one of the leading education systems in the world, right? As an educator, as a professor, how much of this is talked about? How much of this is taught? Our generations that are going to be coming, how aware are they of all of this?
I would say that in the last 5 years, the younger generation, more or less undergraduates and graduate students that are coming through now, are becoming more aware of such things. I think partly because they're living through it. They're living through some of these experiences. They're realizing how vulnerable the system is. They're living. Right now, we've got a generation of undergraduates, or a couple of cohorts, I should say, of undergraduates who have been they've been really disrupted by the pandemic. The last year, I was teaching essentially by Zoom. I was the university asked me to try to hold some classes in person, but the students could Zoom in, there were, of course, all the issues with the pandemic and spread and social distancing, etc. It's been somewhat, I want to say crazy, but not crazy, because we had to do what we had to do to try to keep people as safe as possible. And then, you have the deniers of it. And I came back to things like the theme of the book, which is in part solar outbursts and how that affect ancient civilization, how it could affect modern civilization. The worst thing you can do, I think, is to deny this or think, it's not going to happen in our generation. So at least I, as an educator, try to make students aware of such things.
Now, one of my favorite things, not only to talk to you about, but to other educators and professors out there, I always bring this up. Those professors that come on this show are usually trailblazers, right? That are willing to step outside of the box. It's always, and I think immediately about somebody like Avi Loeb, right? And what he is doing right now. He's talking about extraterrestrials, right? He's talking about but he believes in what he is saying, number one, but number two, he's courageous. He's willing to do it. He's taken a lot. Talk about flack, right? I mean, the real flack. Flaming red hot flack, right? Coming down on him. You went through the same thing. How difficult is it once you do step outside of the box to avoid the flack and to continue?
I would say it's absolutely impossible. You can't avoid it. I think what you have to do is to deal with it. And the way I deal with it, and you and I have talked about this before in different, different forums, et cetera. The way I deal with it is I try to I will always have evidence for what I'm suggesting, and I will be honest about that evidence. I will use the best evidence I have. I will follow the evidence, and when I'm speculating to a certain extent, I will indicate that I'm speculating. When I've got very hard evidence, I will indicate that.
Do you think
as much? So
Sure.
I think it's really a matter of knowing the boundaries, knowing the evidence. This is my approach, at least, to always follow evidence. So, for instance, I have been talking about ancient civilization, but not just ancient civilization in terms of 5,000 years ago with the early dynastic Egyptians, etc. As we have discussed often on this show, I have been promoting the concept that we have true ancient civilization 10,000 plus BC, well before the end of the last ice age. And we have that, of course, with Gobekli Tepe. We have that even before Gobekli Tepe was known with my work on the Sphinx, and that it dates back to a much earlier period when there was no Sahara desert, when there was torrential rainfall, which is why the Sphinx is weathered by water, etc. My academic colleagues in 1991, 1992, 1993, they were livid. They were trying to get me fired, despite the fact that I am tenured. And frankly, I'll be blunt, I did not talk about this stuff before I was tenured. You have to take care of yourself a little bit.
Of course.
And it gives me a certain level of flexibility. But to this day, I'm feeling the pain of it in the sense that, there's still a lot of people that don't like me inside academia, should we say, because I'm upsetting the apple cart. But they also have to face the facts, and I think that is difficult for people. There's a lot of psychology when it comes to academia, a lot of ingrained tendencies, vested interest. I mean, people are people, whether they're academics or someone else.
Well, and describe what that's like. Are you genuine rock star status at Boston University? Where the students know that you have.
I will get students. Okay, I think this is what you're asking. I will get students in my classes who will know exactly who I am before they get there. And then I get some that aren't quite as tuned into such things like ancient civilization and, the work I do, but they'll have vaguely heard of it, and then they'll sometimes, it's funny how they'll sort of ask some questions to feel things out. Am I the person they're thinking of?
Well, yeah, and I guess, yeah, right, totally.
But then others will say that, oh, I saw you on this or that, or, I've watched, 10,000 YouTube videos where you appeared, and what I hear is that they read Forgotten Civilization before they came to class.
Well, and to take it a step further, where they genuinely appreciate your tenacity, right?
Yes. Yes.
You know what I mean? That type
so.
of rock star status too, as well. He's the guy that doesn't give a crap, right?
Yeah. No, I think they appreciate that, and that's why I have a lot of faith in the younger generation. But this is something that we see in science as a generalization, that you have entrenched beliefs, conventional thinking, status quo, sort of mainstream dogma, whether it's the sciences or anything else, in one generation, and then the next generation can have more freedom, should we say, to be open-minded because it's not as entrenched for them. More or less, if you've spent your life studying something and coming to certain conclusions at the end of your life, when I say life, it could be your physical life or it could be your academic career, you don't all of a sudden want to be told that everything you were doing was wrong or that a good chunk of what you believed is not quite right.
Well, where did we lose sight of what academia and science actually is, which is asking questions and figuring things out and wonderment, number one. And number two, in science is nothing but a series of corrections. That's all it is.
And some of those corrections are bigger than other corrections.
How do we lose sight of that? Why is it now?
Well, no, I don't think anyone ever lost sight of that. But it's hard to apply when it's your own personal career, and you've got a vested interest in making sure that your papers are cited, your books are cited, that someone doesn't come out and say, oh, X, Y, and Z was wrong. After all, that doesn't feel good when you're X, Y, and Z and you're being told you're wrong.
Well, when you're a physicist, you better be you got to have thick skin.
There's a lot of people in academia that pay lip service to all the all the right ideals and objectivity of science or any other field, yet to apply that in their own lives, that's a little more difficult.
Well,
it's the same with religion. People who profess to believe, have certain beliefs and that how you should treat people, etc., but do they really carry that out in their everyday life?
Well, if you go back, Robert, to San Diego in 1992, when you were told from every side, up and down, left and right, dude, quit snooping around, quit asking questions. Right? That's the opposite of what you should be doing, and them too as well.
Yeah. Okay, but what you're referring to, I believe, is, and correct me if I'm thinking of a different thing than you're referring to. When you say quit snooping around, you're talking about the Egyptologists.
Yes. Yeah. Well, no,
yes.
and the geologists.
So to fill in all your listeners on the type of thing we're talking about, I have been early in my career with the Sphinx. So we're talking early 1990s. This is before the confirmation of Gobekli Tepe, which did wonders because there you have a second site, another site that's incredibly sophisticated, goes back to 10,000 BC or so. Just for those who forgot or haven't heard about Gobekli Tepe, it's in southeastern Turkey and confirms what I've been talking about or had already been talking about with civilization going back to a much earlier period. So getting back to what I was starting to say, I, in the early 1990s, would go to these conferences, San Diego was one of them, And I would talk to my fellow geologists. I would present this hardcore geological data as to why the Sphinx goes back to this earlier period based on the weathering, based on subsurface seismic testing that I did with Thomas Gobekli. And the geologists I spoke to, it was funny because they all agreed with me, the hardcore geologists, except that some of them said, well, you might even be underestimating how far back it goes based on, details of weathering and subsurface mineralogical changes, etc. So, if anything, they were not only on my side, should we say, but they were, in some cases, saying, it could even be a bit older. On the other hand, the Egyptologists were livid, and the historians and the archaeologists, and getting to the not snooping about, I actually had Egyptologists tell me bluntly, one senior Egyptologist, I'm sure he's deceased by now, he came up to me and he basically said, to paraphrase, young man, because I was much younger back then, of course, young man, you're a geologist. I don't know anything about geology. I don't know anything about rocks. I know you are wrong, and there are a lot of rocks around the world, and I suggest that you go study your rocks somewhere other than in Egypt.
And
it was, I didn't quite get it at the time, but I realized not long afterwards that this was not even really a veiled threat. He was basically saying he was going to do everything he could to ruin my career if I persisted.
And I remember one of the statements that was made in San Diego in 1992 was this generalized thing. Look, show us one thing that is megalithic before Giza, and we can have a conversation.
Yeah.
But nothing exists. So until you show us that, well, 3 years later, Gobekli Tepe pops up.
Exactly, Gobekli Tepe. And as I point out to many people, including my students when we discuss such things, if the community at large, and I'm saying now scientific or academic community, is unwilling to accept the first piece of evidence and just destroys it, throws it out, etc., well, you're never going to get anywhere. To use sort of a very simple example, the first recognized dinosaur bone. Well, if you say, well, that's impossible, big, reptilian type of animals could never have lived millions of years ago on such an enormous scale, this must just be a freak of nature, we toss it out. You're never going to accumulate evidence if you toss it out every time just because it doesn't match your beliefs. Another example is meteorites. A lot of people don't realize that it was only about, 200 plus years ago that the, quote, scientific community recognized that things could actually fall from the sky, like big chunks of rock. They made fun of the, quote, peasants that had actually observed them directly. Oh, that couldn't be the case. It just wasn't logical.
Let's take our break right here. Our guest tonight, Dr. Something in my throat. Dr. Robert M. Schoch. I am your host, Jimmy Church. I'm going to hold the book up to the camera for everybody. There it is, Forgotten Civilization, the revised and expanded and updated edition. You can get your copy now, and the links for everything are over at jimmychurchradio.com. This is Fade to Black. We'll be right back after this short break. Stay with us.
This is Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, the Global Radio Alliance.
This is KGRA Digital Broadcasting Station, Salt Lake City, Utah, Van Buren, Arkansas.
This is Billy Carson with ForbiddenKnowledge.tv. Forbidden Knowledge TV has just reached its 1-year anniversary. That's right, 1 year. And as a show of appreciation, we are giving all new subscribers a free 30-day trial of ForbiddenKnowledge.tv. That's 30 days to binge watch thousands of movies, documentaries, conferences, workshops, lectures, yoga classes, meditation courses, and so much more. So log on to forbiddenknowledge.tv from your computer or mobile device, or get the Forbidden Knowledge TV app on Apple TV, Roku, Amazon, iTunes, or Google Play today and use coupon code 30daysfree. That's coupon code 30daysfree on forbiddenknowledge.tv today.
Because you never got that pony you always wanted. Damn it. Jimmy Church and Fade to Black on the Game Changer Network. KGRADB.com.
Listen, I know, and you know, that you've always wanted your first crystal skull. Or maybe you're a collector just like me, but you just don't know where to go to find the real thing. Then I met Carolyn Ford over at EinsteinTheCrystalSkull.com. Carolyn is the guardian of Einstein, one of the most respected ancient crystal skulls in the world. All of her unique skulls have been imprinted sitting with Einstein in his sacred lodge and are carved from the finest gemstone and materials. Imprinting is the process of receiving the ancient wisdom from the master skull or master computer. Einstein, the ancient crystal skull. To see Carolyn's current collection of crystal skulls, just visit her store at EinsteinTheCrystalSkull.com or click on the banner over on our site. Don't forget to use the promo code Jimmy at checkout to receive 10% off of your order today. That's promo code Jimmy. Finding your first or next crystal skull is easy. Just visit EinsteinTheCrystalSkull.com. When you take the beans from Central America with dashes of Indonesian and African mixed in and then roast it to the dark side of Fade to Black, you create the ultimate brew of fringe. Introducing the Fade to Black blend from Rivermoon Coffee. Yes, Rivermoon's darkest customized roast was created for the love of Fade to Black. The alchemy of masterful roasting and smoking the beans is in every sip of this full-bodied, dark Java. I need my coffee dark, deep, with distinct bittersweet chocolate highlights, just like the bunker. Leaning further into the darkness of the roast is Fade to Black blend from Rivermoon Coffee. Just click on the banner at jimmychurchradio.com and use the promo code F2BBLEND for 15% off of your order today.
Hello, I'm Katie, and you're listening to my main man, Jimmy Church, on jimmychurchradio.com.
Hi, this is Ray Hobbs here, repping the planet, and you're listening to my good friend, Jimmy Church, Fade to Black, on the Game Changer Network and the KGRA digital broadcast station.
This is Toby Kebbell. You're listening to JimmyChurchRadio.com. Don't hurt me, Jimmy. I'm only little.
Hey, I'm Adrian Grenier. And this is Ari Gold. We're the Honey Brothers.
Yes.
We're also Honey Brothers. Hey, I'm Adrian Grenier.
And I'm Ari Gold.
We're the Honey Brothers.
And you're listening to Jimmy Church.
The Revolution.
This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black, and you can become an official Fadernaut by just going to our membership section at jimmychurchradio.com.
Hello, this is Serena Wright Taylor from Conscious Life Expo, and you're listening to Fade to Black with Jimmy Church, who holds the Lucky Pony record for the best astrological chart since 1963. True story.
This is Micah Hanks of the Gralien Report, and you're listening to Jimmy Church on Fade to Black, across the globe on the Game Changer Radio Network and the one and only KGRA Radio, The Planet.
Welcome back, Fade to Black. I am your host, Jimmy Church. Tonight, Robert M. Schoch is here. Man, I'm so happy. Get to hang out with Robert for the next couple hours. And he just went, what? Couple hours? What are you talking about? How long is this show, Jimmy? Hey, Robert, the big news a couple of months ago, and I mean, I couldn't believe my eyes, renaming Gobekli Tepe to 12 Tepe. What did you make of that?
To 12 Tepe?
Oh, you didn't know? Oh, am I?
Yeah, what are you referring to?
Okay, there's a press release. Yeah, you can look it up. They found 11 more Gobekli Tepes.
Well, that's what I thought you were referring to.
Yeah.
But Gobekli Tepe is still called Gobekli Tepe.
I think they've renamed the site 12 Tepe.
Yeah, but that's the larger site. And in fact, that's just something I wanted to bring up. So it's funny that you bring it up, because the whole site is so huge, it's so humongous. And when I was there with the late Klaus Schmidt, that, unfortunately he died prematurely. And for those that don't know or don't remember, it was Klaus Schmidt of the German Archaeological Institute who first started excavating at Gobekli Tepe. And again, as we were discussing, this was after I had first presented my work on the Sphinx, so people were asking me, where's there other megalithic sites that go back to that early period? And, I was with him, Katie and I were with him there, and we were talking about, and he sort of waved his arm around to all the hills around Gobekli Tepe, and said that so many of these are probably artificial also and contain other remains under them, that this is really a huge collective complex. So that's why they're renaming it that. I still think of the actual core portion as Gobekli Tepe, and I think it's probably in the literature always going to keep that name.
Now,
but it's a really huge site, and I also wanted to comment, if I could, that a lot of people, when I say a lot of people, archaeologists, they say, oh, these are just primitive hunter-gatherers. They didn't have settlements. They didn't have cities. You need to have cities and settlements and permanent sites of habitation if you're going to call it true civilization, because I'm making the case in Forgotten Civilization with lots of evidence that, no, this is true civilization before the end of the last ice age. They had, and I talked about this in Forgotten Civilization, the new edition, that I'm now convinced they had writing. They were incredibly sophisticated. Where's their city? And I am now of the belief that their, quote, city is still with us. It's a city of Urfa, Shanli Urfa, where so-called Urfa Man, this 12,000-year-old statue, life-size statue of a human, beautifully carved. You would think it was carved, 50 years ago or 10 years ago. That more or less it's a modern carving. If you just looked at it, it looks so modernistic and beautiful. So these were incredibly sophisticated, with a city that today is still occupied, I believe, whenever they do construction work in the modern Urfa, which is only a 15, 20, 30-minute drive from Gobekli Tepe, the Gobekli Tepe complex. Whenever they do modern construction or new road work or build an underground garage, they hit this older stratum of Gobekli Tepe time and often find incredibly sophisticated artifacts.
Now, what if you were going to take a guess? Do you think that these additional 11 sites that ring Gobekli Tepe, is there a possibility that they are older than Gobekli Tepe?
Oh, yes.
And that we're
Absolutely.
now going to...
In fact, we don't really know how far back Gobekli Tepe itself goes. We don't know how far back these other sites go, and they're all their own little tepes, should we say, which, is basically hills. Where you have excavation sites where it's been filled over. And another thing about Gobekli Tepe and a lot of these other sites is that they were purposefully covered over. They were purposefully buried. And I am convinced, based on the evidence, that has to do with the calamities, the catastrophes, the cataclysm that occurred at the end of the last ice age with major solar outbursts. But certainly what we have I'm convinced, with Gobekli Tepe and the supplementary sites, I'll refer to as supplementary sites right now, is a situation where we had a civilization really well developed at its height, and it was essentially, if not exactly snuffed out, thrown back to a much simpler state in 9700 BC with the catastrophes that ended the last ice age and all of a sudden, changed climatic patterns and caused massive extinctions around the globe. Again, all contributed to a solar outburst, which is what I discuss in the book. So when you look at Gobekli Tepe right now, you can see what was excavated, you can see what goes back to the end of the last ice age, 9700 BC, and something that I actually came to conclude, and I had a chance to speak with Dr. Schmidt about this briefly last time I saw him, of course, before he unexpectedly passed away, was that some of the pillars we have at Gobekli Tepe were reused. So they were actually older pillars, older artifacts that had been reused, and we're talking about reusing them approximately 12,000 years ago, but essentially they were older structures and came from older structures still. So minimally, based on the evidence we have at hand, which is incomplete, I'm estimating that Gobekli Tepe was used for several thousand years. That it goes back at least several thousand years before it came to its demise. So how far back this earlier civilization goes, we really don't know at this point. We know effectively when it ended at the end of the last ice age, and then what Katie and I and other people are now calling the solar-induced dark age, that goes from about 9700 BC to the reemergence of civilization about 3500 BC, that 6,000-year dark age. Well, how far back it goes, we just don't know.
Yeah, so let me ask you this. This civilization, are we referring to hunter-gatherers? Are we talking about a civilization, Robert, that was upright, agriculture, religion, a political system, and a government, and all systems in place, writing?
No, we are talking more along the lines of the latter. But I say along the lines of the latter because it's very... Something that I have a lot of issues with is some of my colleagues, and when I say some of my colleagues, I'm thinking of my academic colleagues as well as other people, but academic colleagues who like to look at ancient civilization through the lens of our own civilization with our own priorities, our own, inclinations, our own understanding, and they weren't us necessarily. So were they hunter-gatherers? Not in the sense that we think of as hunter-gatherers. They were a true civilization, I'm convinced. I'm actually convinced they had writing, that they did science as we would see it, but did they necessarily make the same distinctions between the various fields, let's say science and religion and philosophy, that we do? Not necessarily. But as I discuss in the book, they seem to, for instance, have had a very good concept of what we would now call plasma physics, solar plasma physics. Well, that makes sense, actually, because they were living at the end of their civilization, at least at a time when the sun was erupting, and they were observing what the sun was doing, and they may have known the signs of what to look for when a solar outburst was about to occur. I just give that as one example. They were certainly building, incredible megalithic sites. How they did that with a little bit of technology that we're aware of, I cannot cogently explain. I don't necessarily subscribe to what Katie refers to as the chip method, more or less, the classic archaeological thing that, you just use very, very primitive stone tools and you just chip, and you take, 20 generations to make one. I'm exaggerating a little bit, but to carve out one pillar. When you look at the workmanship, etc., it just doesn't add up in that sense. Did they have agriculture? We don't know.
Well, wouldn't they? Okay,
but,
well, let me.
Agriculture is not necessary.
I'm going to interrupt you.
Case.
I'm going to interrupt you. I'm going to interrupt Dr. Robert Schoch right now, right in front of everybody, and I'll do it again too, Robert. Is this, and this is where I will debate Katie on this, and I love her to death. But when you look at, just forget about the other 11 sites that they have right there. But when you look at the size of Gobekli Tepe itself, and we still don't know how deep and how big it actually is. We don't know. But you have to have an organization in place to support the workers that are quarrying, that are moving the stones. You have to clothe them. You have to feed them. You have to cart. You have to. There has to be a system in place that is organized. You have to have a culture.
No, I didn't say she didn't say that.
Okay, it's a good thing she didn't, because she's going to face me.
Then. What I was saying is that to suggest that they were doing this all with incredibly primitive tools, I don't think makes sense. That's why I was referring to.
No, Katie, they weren't chip chipping. No, they weren't chip chipping. And
no,
they weren't.
And they had to be organized. This is interesting because one of the things that I was told in 1991 by an Egyptologist was that, and I talk about this actually in the book. One of the things that I was told is that back in hunter-gatherer times, more or less, 10,000 BC or 7,000 BC or something like that, they didn't have the social structures. They didn't have the willpower. How what the willpower is on the part of ancient people, I have no clue, but they didn't have the willpower to organize themselves to create megalithic structures. Well, that's disproven by Gobekli Tepe. That's disproven by my work on the Sphinx. They had to have the social structures. They had to have the organizations. The one comment I wanted to make about hunter-gatherers is that we have hunter-gatherer societies today which are very, very marginalized. So when we look at hunter-gatherer societies today, most people think of very, quote, primitive societies, unquote, that have to spend all their time and energy just to survive. They don't have any time to do anything else, certainly not to make megalithic structures or follow arts and sciences and develop philosophies, etc. Well, I think that's a horrible misconception, because in other situations, you have hunter-gatherer societies that have developed incredible civilizations, and a lot of people don't realize that. So, for instance, the Northwest Coast peoples in the northern North America, Canada, North America, they had an incredible society, and they built huge structures and what people call totem poles, etc. Now, this is all wood compared to megalithic structures, but they still had incredible society, and they were effectively hunter-gatherers. What did they gather? They gathered a lot of seafood in their case, etc. We, to this day, are hunter-gatherers in the sense of a lot of wild seafood is gathered from the ocean. So to use these labels sometimes, I'm not saying you do this, Jimmy, but when my academic colleagues can just sort of wave their hands and dismiss and say, they didn't have agriculture, they were hunter-gatherers, that's not really a valid argument. The other argument, that they didn't have agriculture, is not necessarily valid either, because something that has now been discovered is that it's very, very, very difficult to tell domesticated grains from wild grains at the very early stages of domestication. Later, when you have, things that have been domesticated for thousands of years, you can tell the difference because it's closer to us, it looks like what we eat, etc.
Mm-hmm.
But it's easy to mistake domesticated
wheat
materials, wheat and barley and domesticated animals, etc., for non-domesticated when you're talking 12,000 and more years ago. And it's also easy to mistake, getting back to tools, to mistake what might be tools and what might not be tools, because in most cases they're not going to leave their tools sitting around for us to find. And the only thing we might find are a few broken, fragments that are overlooked easily. So there's a lot of issues trying to reconstruct the past, and there's this incredible bias, I believe, among standard archaeologists and historians to look down on past peoples, and I'll use the term primitivize them, more or less make them more primitive than is justified by the evidence we have.
Yeah, that's such a good point. And when people try to fight this, your colleagues and others, right? When they try to fight this, their argument for me stops in its tracks when you take an example of Gobekli Tepe and those columns that were quarried 25 miles away. And you're telling me that a primitive culture that you're telling me was digging in the dirt for seeds, right, to eat, right, that primitive culture figured out a way without the wheel and without anything else to quarry and move those tonnage, right? Tonnage.
Oh, yeah.
That is not a simple...
These pillars, you're talking 10, 15 tons. Okay, that is not the 50, 100 tons that you might get at Giza for some of the blocks, but these pillars, just let's say 10-ton pillar to a 15-ton pillar, that is not trivial, number one. But number two, and when people look at the photographs in the book, and by the way, for those who have the first edition, if I'm allowed to say this, they should get the second edition. I hope they'll get the second edition because it's so much more expanded, including 40-plus new photographs, a new chapter, et cetera, et cetera. So, not to push the book, but to push the information. When you look at these pillars that were carved at Gobekli Tepe, they are so beautifully carved with reliefs on them, with figures in the round, tall, thin. This is a real feat, and I can say that as a geologist. This is a real feat to do this and to erect them without them snapping. Because they're not big, they're not ugly at Stonehenge, but they're not big, rough-hewn pillars as you see at Stonehenge. I mean, those things you could, from a geological point of view at Stonehenge, you can drag those around, and if you try to put it up once and it falls down, you can try to put it up again. It's probably not going to break on you. But with Gobekli Tepe, if they carved that pillar out completely, and then when they were trying to erect it, if they didn't do it just right, it could have snapped on them.
And the book has my favorite picture of you. So this is worth the book right here. It's Dr. Schoch and Urfa Man. It's one of my it's one of my favorite pictures.
He's my friend there.
It's one of my favorite pictures.
Yeah, no, but to go and to see him and to look him in the eye, so to speak, and this is someone looking back at me, or at least an image of someone looking back at me from 12,000 years ago. It's really quite amazing, and you know what we're looking at. I mean, that does not look like some primitive caveman, does it?
No, it's an impossibility. And as we head to the break, we can pick this up when we come back. But how do they honestly, especially today, we're getting too smart, but where they honestly want us to believe that if they say it enough, it becomes truth and becomes fact. Well, in this case, it just doesn't work. We're talking about something that is 7,000 years older than 7,000 years. And a civilization like that wasn't supposed to exist. Well, it did, which means they were organized. They had all the elements of a modern advanced civilization that we would expect, that would think of, design, engineer, quarry, and build Gobekli Tepe. And there must be more. And now it turns out there are. I think the whole argument doesn't hold water.
It doesn't. It doesn't.
Let's get ready to take our break. And the other part of this, which we kind of moved off of, but I want to continue this when we come back. If these dates start to push back, where we are getting into 12, 13, 14, 15,000 BC or older, just at the site of Gobekli Tepe, how does this change history?
It's very profound. It's very profound. I mean, I think we really have to rethink our origins and how far back humanity goes and what humanity went through. And that's one of the lessons of Forgotten Civilization also, is that it has not been a one-way street of upward progress. There have been setbacks. There have been cycles of civilization. And that's what the ancient people said about that's what ancient people 5,000 years ago said. And modern academics have just wanted to dismiss this as a bunch of myths and nonsense. But 5,000 years ago, the dynastic Egyptians and others were talking about their predecessors thousands of years earlier who were incredibly sophisticated.
That's right, being taught. Everything is taught, right? Very rarely do we have somebody sitting in a cave, not hunting and gathering, but sitting in a cave, and his wife comes in and says, "Hey, what are you doing?" "Oh, I just thought of a way to domesticate wheat." Right? Okay. Yeah. Okay. Those events do happen once in a while, but everything is taught, which says to me, Robert, that somebody taught people how to carve and build Gobekli Tepe. It came from somewhere else. It was taught and it's handed down. And why is it such a hard road to fight? I just don't get it. It seems so simple to me.
Oh. Not to academics.
Not to academics. Let's take our break right here. Our guest tonight, Dr. Robert M. Schoch. And I got to tell you, he's got so many letters after his name. I have none. But these conversations are the best. Robert, stay right there. We'll be right back.
Way out here, we listen to Jimmy Church.
You're listening to Fade to Black.
Always on the edge of the hottest alternative talk. Jimmy Church with Fade to Black. KGRARadio.com.
¿Qué tal, mis amigos? Yo soy Mario Carson, el tiburón, y los invito para que escuchen a mi buen amigo Jimmy Church Radio. ¡Claro que sí!
Do you want to be an official Fadernaut? Of course you do. This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black. Just go to our membership section at jimmychurchradio.com. This is Jimmy Church, and I invite you to attend the 20th Annual Los Angeles Conscious Life Expo live and in person this September 17th, 18th, and 19th at the LAX Airport Hilton. Connect with exhibitors, community, thought leaders, and friends as we begin to recreate the world. You can also watch the expo from the comfort of your own home. Live stream from the main stage in Los Angeles and from the main stage in London. Truly a global simulcast event broadcast around the world. Live stream and in-person expo tickets are available now. I'll be your host all weekend long from Los Angeles. And on Friday, it's my Ancient Secrets and Earth Mysteries themed segment with James Keenan, Caroline Corey, and William Henry. And on Saturday, Daniel Sheen and I sit down for a one-on-one interview live. We have an amazing lineup of 25 speakers, including Bashar, Gail Thackeray, Kimberly Meredith, Whitley Strieber, Stephen Bassett, Daniel Brinkley, and Lisa Garr. Please visit ConsciousLifeExpo.com for tickets and info. That's ConsciousLifeExpo.com and use that promo code Jimmy for a special discount. Fadernauts. When you think about the future of our country and where we're headed, do you wonder about the food supply? I do. Disruptions in the food supply chain could be disastrous, and they usually occur with little warning. That's why the smartest thing you can do today is to stockpile emergency food, water, and other essentials. I personally recommend My Patriot Supply. They're the nation's largest emergency preparedness company, serving millions of customers for more than a decade. In fact, they're the only source my family trusts for our preparedness plan. You should too. Right now, save 20% off a full 4-week supply of delicious meals that provide 2,000 calories a day. Saving 20% helps too, doesn't it? Especially now. So go to preparewithjimmy.com and get ready. That's preparewithjimmy.com. There's no time to lose. Do it now.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7 with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
You listen to us, and we listen to you. And so does the CIA. KGRARadio.com.
You are listening to Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Network.
Oi, oi, I'm Reese Evans. You're listening to Jimmy Church. This is Revolution. The revolution will not be televised. The revolution is on radio. Ciao.
Welcome back. Fade to Black. I am your host, Jimmy Church. Tonight, Dr. Robert M. Schoch is with us. More with Robert in just a second because I've got to talk to you about Virtual Shield. You've got to get Virtual Shield. Virtual Shield, you need your own VPN. And at this point of the show, every night I say it. And after everything that I just laid out with entropy and the internet and everything else, you need your own VPN. You've got to get it. You've got to get it now. You need to run in secret. You need to run in the dark like I do. You don't need anybody knowing what you search, like entropy. You don't want that. You don't want that. You don't want those entropy ads popping up in your news feed. Get Virtual Shield right now. virtualshield.com/fade to black. Take you right there. 50% off for life. Simple. Click on the link in the video description box below. Virtual Shield, it's right there. It's all easy to do. We have ads over at jimmychurchradio.com. Click and get Virtual Shield. You need your own VPN. So many reasons to do it. And tonight, our guest is Dr. Robert M. Schoch. Now, Robert, I want to take advantage of our time together here. We don't get to talk directly to our teachers and our educators out there. You're getting ready to go back to school. Are you going to be teaching in person?
New semester begins in September.
And in person?
In person. At least that's what I'm told. I'm a little nervous about, to be honest.
Why would you be nervous?
Oh, I don't know. Little things. Very, very little things like viruses.
Yeah, like very, very tiny little things.
Very tiny little things. No, but, I've been studying ancient civilization. I've been studying what leads, and we're trying to figure it out, what leads to the rise and fall of civilization, and sometimes it can be something that you don't necessarily expect. At the Gobekli Tepe, people initially expect a solar outburst. Actually, I think they did, because I think they were sophisticated enough to know that might be coming, but that didn't mean that they could necessarily deal with it successfully, which apparently they did not. Since it really threw them back. So going back to teaching in person, I'm very nervous about it with the new variants that are coming out, et cetera. I won't lie about that. I'm fully vaccinated. You and I have talked about this.
Mm-hmm.
I plan to do everything I can to protect myself and protect the students. The university is trying to do that, but it's been difficult.
Is it going to
take? Everyone knows, over the last year and a half, and trying to do classes remote, and so the plan right now, as I understand it, for Boston University, is that we're going back in person come September 2nd. I believe is the first day.
How long will it take you to get back into the swing of things? Teaching in person, being on stage.
How long? Well, I'll probably have to do that within a matter of hours.
Yeah, exactly.
I know what you're asking, though. It's going to be difficult because it's not just me. It's the faculty, it's the support staff, it's the administrators, but more than anything else, it's the students. And these students, I've been dealing with them, and I mean that in the best of way of speaking. I've been discussing things. I've been holding classes the last academic year by Zoom. I've had some contact with students actually talking about archaeology over the summer via Zoom, etc. But they're anxious to get back in person, but it's going to be, I think, there'll be difficulties with the transition, with people being nervous, with people having been away for so long, even physical systems. For instance, on campus, I'll give you a little example, and this ties in with your entropy that you were talking about before. I go in and I want to use a photocopier. The photocopier doesn't work properly. Why? Because no one's been using it, so no one's been maintaining it, etc. So even practical things like that a lot of people don't think about.
Yeah, when I picture, I've been to Boston so many times, and it's such a great city, but when you drive around and walk, and you see the concentration of schools. Boston is a college town, all of it is, right? And you walk around, and you drive around, and the students and and it's all, it's life, and that's what you see. And I can't imagine what Boston's been like for the last year and a half when all of that gone.
It's been very different.
Yeah.
It's been, not anywhere close to the number of people on the street in Boston because the students haven't been there. There's been a lot more rats that have come out. I'm not joking about that.
Right.
Because, I'm not trying to pick on rats, and I'm not trying to sound the wrong way, but a lot of people don't think about this because the universities have been closed down. The restaurants have been closed down. There hasn't been as much food in the dumpsters, which rats feed on. So it's disrupted their system,
I never thought about that.
Literally, I've got biology friends who have been studying how the rats' social behavior has changed because of the pandemic.
They're pissed off.
Yeah, they are, and they're having
angry.
rat fights.
Yes,
I'm not making this up. They're fighting over the limited resources where there used to be abundance with lots of people around. There's not enough people now. There's not enough food for the rats. And I know it sounds grotesque, maybe, but I mentioned this because you started talking about such things and it came to mind. But if we have, for instance, a meltdown from a solar outburst, I mean, the few little things that we've seen during the pandemic, issues like that, plus so many other issues, are going to be magnified, tenfold, hundredfold.
Now, I wanted let's go back to Giza for a second.
I sound like I'm being very negative, and I didn't mean to be negative or depressing. But you asked about going back to classes.
Yeah, we're all dealing with it. We're seeing, bears and deers and coyote, and they're all coming out.
Yeah, a lot of wildlife. That wildlife is being affected by this too, if not, not necessarily directly, but indirectly, but in a very real way.
The going back to Giza, the dating of things there is one thing, but let's talk about this in a more pragmatic way. The ability to quarry, to carve, and to move, and you have the engineering, but then of course you have astronomy that is involved with this. You have some hardcore algebra and geometry and mathematics.
Oh yeah,
that is all involved. If we back that up to 5,000 years ago, 3,000 BC, Mene, right? Let's just start right there at the beginning of the dynastic part of things, and the first pharaoh and Upper and Lower Egypt are now united. All of that happened very, very quickly. It couldn't have happened the way that Egyptologists want us to believe, which is it just happened, right? That's their.
I know.
Right?
And something that I want to remind your listeners about is that in many respects, and many Egyptologists will agree with this because they can't really deny all of the evidence, in many respects, the highest level of sophistication in dynastic Egypt goes back to the period of about 24 to, let's say, 2800 BC, more or less very early. If you look at the Giza pyramids from 2500 BC and you compare those to pyramids and other structures 1,000 years later, there's almost no comparison. They're so much more sophisticated early on in dynastic times than later. And as you say, they sort of pop virtually out of nowhere. People make sort of excuses when I say people, certain Egyptologists, and say, well, they started building them and they built Pyramid Maidum, which then collapsed while they were learning how to build pyramids. But there's another side to the story. It's not clear to me that's actually a collapsed pyramid in the classic sense that, they just didn't know how to build pyramids. And you look at the Giza pyramids, you look at the Dashur pyramid, the so-called Red Pyramid, or North Pyramid, or the Bent Pyramid. I mean, these are incredible structures with basically no precedence.
The other part to this, it must be Egypt was taught. Egypt was taught. That's civilization. They were taught things.
Well,
and if
they were taught, or let me back up a little bit. They were taught, or they learned. They could be two different things. So one analogy I use is we have a Renaissance in Western Europe. We have a Renaissance where they rediscovered things. They rediscovered ancient knowledge after essentially 1,000-year gap. They rediscovered the Greco-Roman civilization, effectively. Not that it had been totally forgotten, but so much had been lost.
But is it too much of a stretch to suggest, if we just go down the chain, whether it's Siberia or it's a civilization that came from the north and then and migrated south, but that the same knowledge at Gobekli Tepe is the same knowledge that spread through Mesopotamia and Egypt, right? And that's where it came from. It's all connected.
Well, there's a lot of evidence, I think, that it's coming, at least in the immediate sense. You have Gobekli Tepe. So you have the Gobekli Tepe, which is in northern Mesopotamia, between the Tigris and Euphrates in modern southeastern Turkey.
Right.
And you have Cappadocia, where you have the incredible underground cities. There's linguistic evidence that there was a pocket of people in that area, Anatolia, which covers much of modern Turkey, that there was a group of people there that survived the catastrophes at the end of the last ice age and then essentially spread out again slowly. When I say linguistic evidence, for instance, Indo-European languages have been traced back to that specific region, which includes the Cappadocia and Gobekli Tepe area, the Cappadocia-Urfa area. And something that I've developed, and I talk about at length in Forgotten Civilization, is how people, pockets of humanity, had to survive the catastrophes at the end of the last ice age. One way I think they survived was by going underground, going into underground caves and shelters, that type of thing. I don't think it's just coincidental that we have these incredibly huge underground complexes in the Cappadocia, or Cappadocia, you can pronounce it either way, region of Anatolia, not that far from the Gobekli Tepe Urfa area. The geology is appropriate for it. It's a sort of a soft volcanic rock that would have had natural caves in it initially. People could carve into it. You have these underground cities that could hold thousands of people and livestock and supplies, etc. So you have all the right conditions for survival of this catastrophe. So, yeah, what came before that, I don't know. And we start talking about that before the break. How far back could this earlier cycle of civilization go? We really don't know. But we do, I'm convinced, have the evidence of how they were able to survive the catastrophes and basically hang out and hold it together for thousands of years before a new flowering, a new reemergence of civilization. So were they some of the teachers in the immediate sense? I think that could definitely be the case.
Now,
and they carried on these traditions. You know, it's not, again, I use, because people I think can understand it sometimes, I use the example of the Dark Ages, post-collapse of the Western Roman Empire, and the monasteries where they kept literature going, they kept certain thoughts going, they kept certain knowledge. In some cases, the monks literally, they would just copy and recopy and recopy. They didn't quite understand what they were doing, but they knew it was important. They knew that there was value to what they had, even if they didn't have all the pieces together to really understand exactly what the value was.
Now, that's such a great point. And now, I'm going to ask you something direct. I don't think I've ever asked you this before, but I'm very confused.
You've never been known for being super subtle, have you?
Ever. Is this, you're a geologist. How hard is granite? Just give me one word. How hard is granite?
One word, hard.
It's hard.
Very hard.
Very hard.
It depends on your granite, but if you're talking nice, fresh granite, it's very hard. It depends on, I don't want to get too geological on you, it depends on what the ratio of feldspars to micas to quartzes are in it. But think of quartz. think of quartz. Most granite has a fairly good percentage of quartz in it. Quartz is quite hard. You think of a quartz crystal.
Yes. Okay, so how is it possible to elegantly carve with precision red granite with copper? How is that just...
It's very difficult. So this gets back to something that we were talking about earlier this evening, and that's why, and I don't want to misinterpret, I was talking about the chip method. Yep. A lot of archaeologists say that they used the chip method, just kept chipping away at it with, another rock, that type of thing, or a simple copper tool. And what I was saying before is that Katie and I do not agree with that. We make fun of the, quote, chip method. And it has been suggested in some cases that you could use copper tools to try to carve granite like that. Every example I've actually seen where someone really tried it with genuine copper tools, what happens? The copper bends and, it just doesn't work. Now, if you put a little tin in the copper to make it bronze, you get a little bit better. You can get a little bit, make a little bit more headway before you lose an edge, before your tool is non-functional. But something that has been suggested is that they may have been using some type of iron, that they may have, iron meteorites have been suggested, smelting iron, not fully, this gets a little complicated, not fully melting the iron down like you would in modern times, but if you get basically a sort of a crude wrought iron, that could have been used. But then archaeologists say, well, you don't find any iron tools, etc. That is true. But think about iron. It's not going to last, especially if you're talking tools that people aren't going to lose to begin with. They're not going to just leave them around for people to find, but even if they did drop them and they got lost, they're going to rust after thousands of years. So it gets to be a very, should we say, iffy question, or a very contentious issue as to how they were carving these things. In dynastic Egypt, you go to dynastic Egypt, even a mere 3,000, 4,000, 4,500 years ago. Look at the statuary in the Egyptian Museum, or look at what's still on site to be seen. How did they carve that? Even with the technology that we know they had, it's mind-boggling.
Now, but here's the deal, and I'm not suggesting anything. I'm just thinking outside of the box. But when we talk about that going down at 2800 BC, it's very difficult to digest. I still don't buy into how the precision. It's not only the granite blocks, but it's the sarcophagus and other things. But
no,
but
I'm agreeing with you. It's
but let's
very
back up.
hard to figure out how they did this, or to sort of swallow the conventional explanations. There's been cases, I've talked to sculptors and master carvers who work on stone today, and they can't necessarily duplicate what the ancient Egyptians were doing. At least they can't duplicate it in any reasonable time frame. They can, some of them will say, oh, yeah, they could do it if you give them enough time and you pay them enough. But that's using modern power tools, etc. also.
But
it's a real problem.
But let's back up 7,000 years.
Yeah, 7,000 years
how do you,
earlier when you're talking 12,000 years ago.
Right. So as a geologist, and you look at the 3D reliefs, and it's, specifically the cat, right, the cougar at Gobekli Tepe, how is that done in the chip method? it's 7,000 years prior. The precision of those T-pillars, the 3D relief carving, it's 3D. It's not inset, it's outset. How do you do that with the chip method? You don't. There's got to be something. Would you be surprised?
That was our point. Yeah, that's the point that Katie and I have been making.
Would you be surprised? Now, metallurgy didn't happen until 2500, 2700 BC, and that's copper. Bronze Age is even further inwards. But would you be surprised if there was metallurgy found in the area of Gobekli Tepe? Would it surprise you?
I will not be surprised if we, at some point, find metallurgy at that earlier period. Absolutely not. Are we there yet? No. But we haven't found a lot of things. And I'll make another point about potential metallurgy or how did they carve these things. People often look at the big statues, the big monuments, the big megaliths. But at Gobekli Tepe, you also find small things. For instance, you find little teeny beads, and these beads are so beautifully carved. They were used for jewelry or whatnot, but they're so beautifully carved. But what's really important, and the point I want to make, is that they have drilled through them these tiny little holes along their length. So these are stone beads, hard stone beads with little holes drilled through them that are, centimeter or more long. How do you do that without metallurgy? How do you do that without metal? What are they doing? Are they taking, I don't know what they would take, a little piece of thin wood and somehow, picking away at the stone? I mean, they're going to spend their lifetime picking away it wouldn't even work.
Yeah, there's another.
I don't know how they could do some of this, honestly, without some kind of metallurgy.
I think it's going to surface. And there's another site, a Karahunj in Armenia proper. And Karahunj, which means Stonehenge, by the way, in Armenian. But Karahunj, at that site, the megalithic structures themselves, that's one thing. But there was a wall on the side of Karahunj with copper and metal faces that were there. And now this is something that historians and archaeologists will dispute, but that there is metallurgy there at dating between 5,000 and 7,000 BC. And we have to just stop and ask ourselves, how is that possible? Or is it that it was prevalent, that there was metallurgy that predated 3000 BC?
Yeah, and what do we do with metal nowadays? Well, we have lots of metal, so yes, lots of metal gets disposed of. But when I think nowadays, I'm talking as a geologist, let's say the last 500 years, most metal would get reused. People would reuse metal. They didn't just throw it away. They didn't just leave it sitting around. It was valuable. If your metal tool was no longer functional or you didn't want it, what did you do? You reused the metal. You didn't just toss it away. So, yeah, I think there's a lot of possibility. Metallurgy, I think, is something that we're going to learn a lot more about in the future. If I could make predictions, we're going to learn a lot more about how far back it goes and how sophisticated it may have been for extremely ancient people. I was going to say, too, you're talking about what different terms mean. Gobekli Tepe basically means hill with a navel, or some people interpret it as navel of the world, that type of thing. But a hill and a navel, and the suggestion that maybe this was an origins place, a place where things go back to a certain origin. Mm-hmm. Easter Island also had the name Tipita Tehenua, which essentially means navel of the world. So a lot of places trace themselves back to certain origin sites.
Let's take our break right here. Our guest tonight, Dr. Robert M. Schoch. I'm going to hold it up to the camera. We're talking about the revised and expanded edition of Forgotten Civilization. There it is right there. You can get your copy now. I'll be right back after this short break.
Hi everybody, this is Rob Halford, the Metal God on JimmyChurchRadio.com.
This is KGRA Digital Broadcasting Station, Salt Lake City, Utah, Van Buren, Arkansas.
Why is it we're not very good with our health regimen until it's too late? We don't put oil in the car until the engine blows up. When the body's out of balance, your health is not so good. Give your body some love. Log on to GetTheT.com. That's GetTheT.com. Try our Life Change Tea, which cleanses you from harmful intruders. A clean colon is one of the ways to bring the body in balance. We also carry organic supplements to help you get where you need to go. So do your body a favor. Log on to GetTheT.com. That's GetTheT.com. You can even visit our sales page to save some dough. Does anybody call money dough anymore? Anyway, if you're looking for short, helpful health tips, go to YouTube and punch in Health Matters Now. That's Health Matters Now. So, log on to GetTheT.com, shop, get balanced, then learn some cool tips at Health Matters Now. You'll be glad you did. That's GetTheT.com.
Your contact for current news and trending topics. KGRARadio.com.
This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black, and I only drink Fade to Black blend coffee from Rivermoon. Just click on the Rivermoon Coffee banner at jimmychurchradio.com. Promo code F2B Blend.
This is the only way forward.
This is Fade to Black. Make contact. KGRARadio.com.
When you're in the house for longer periods of time, you can see them flying or running across the floor. Ooh, yuck. They're unhealthy, gross, and disgusting. Bugs. I loathe bugs. We keep a clean home, but occasionally bugs show up. Well, I found something that is tougher than bugs. Orange Guard. On contact, it kills hidden bugs, including ants, roaches, and fleas. Plus, Orange Guard is a residual repellent. All of the ingredients of Orange Guard are on the FDA generally recognized as safe list. Orange Guard may be used around food, humans, and pets. It comes with a 30-day money-back guarantee. Orange Guard, available at orangeguard.com, Whole Foods, and Ace Hardware.
Gold loves chaos, uncertainty, and disarray. History shows us what gold does when people aren't sure about the government, the stock market, their jobs, or their retirement savings. Our national debt is skyrocketing. Gold and other precious metals are a defense measure against inflation and a stock market that might take years to recover. So what can you do right now to protect yourself? Call United Gold Group. We offer gold and other precious metals delivered securely within 72 hours. Are you worried about the stock market? We can also help you set up a real gold or silver IRA or a 401k. Safe and secure. United Gold Group makes gold ownership affordable. Call now and get up to $2,500 in free gold or silver with a qualified IRA. Call 800-753-8534. That's 800-753-8534 or visit UnitedGoldGroup.com.
You want to know a secret? I love ponies. I really love ponies. I'm serious. I couldn't stay sane without ponies to brush.
Why fade to black? Because you never got that pony, damn it.
This is Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, the Global Radio Alliance.
Welcome back. Fade to Black. I am your host, Jimmy Church. I want to let everybody know that all the testing worked over at the campus, the Making Contact campus. So tomorrow night we will be broadcasting from there. We're going to do Fader Night. We're going to do Fader Night everywhere. Don't freak out. But if you've got your tickets and you are ready to go and get your avatar on, head over to the campus tomorrow night and head into the auditorium, and you can check things out there. Also, I'll see if I am able to. Well, I am able to do it. I don't know how I can split my brain up into avatar and show host mode, but I'm going to have my avatar there too as well, standing on the stage. And so we'll figure that out. And I think that afterwards, I'm going to make Captain Ron and the team over there stay over late, and maybe we can do a little question and answer from the podium tomorrow night too as well, and I'll go into full avatar mode. So we're going to try all of that out tomorrow night, but that's going to be great. If you haven't gotten your tickets yet or built your avatar, just head over to makingcontact.com. Use the promo code JimmySave100, save $100, and get your avatar on. Get it. It's all up and running. I've been watching the screenshots and the text coming in from the team over there. It is totally awesome, and Making Contact kicks off next week. Our guest tonight, Dr. Robert M. Schoch. Now, this is where we've only got a short time left with you tonight. I am going to Egypt in March, as you know, Robert. I'm very excited about this, but I'm going to ask you a couple of questions.
Sure.
Our first few days there will be in and around Cairo and Giza, of course. Now, what I want you to give me the advice. Okay, so I get down into the Sphinx complex, right? And I'm walking. Where do I go? What does Robert Schoch tell me to go and check out?
With the Sphinx down,
yes.
Are you going to go down to the Sphinx enclosure?
I'm paying everybody off. I have.
Okay, you're going to pay everyone off. Okay, but be careful about paying people off because you'll do it correctly. No, I'm serious.
I know.
You be safe in Egypt with the people, with everything. But you get into the Sphinx enclosure, which if you pay your dues, you'll be able to do. I would take several walks around the Sphinx. I would really observe what you see on the body. How does it impress you? You'll be able to go between the paws of the Sphinx. You can look at the stela, the dream stela of Tutmosis IV. It will be very interesting because you can see on the stela there's two sphinxes. And there's been a lot of discussion, could there be a second Sphinx? That's
right.
That's one issue. The other thing is, when you look at those sphinxes, they look like they're sitting on top of buildings. But what they're really doing, I'm convinced now, is that they are showing that there is something under the Sphinx. And in fact, we found under the Sphinx, when I say we, this is Thomas Gobekli and myself, back in the 1990s, using seismic techniques, we found a chamber under the left paw of the Sphinx. So when you're at the Sphinx, I'm talking the left paw of the Sphinx as an animal. So if you're facing the Sphinx, it's the paw on your right side.
Right.
But it's under that there is a major chamber, which may in fact be the, quote, Hall of Records that Edgar Cayce talked about, that ancient people talked about. We now have hieroglyphic evidence that the Sphinx was originally a lioness, a female lion. One of the things that I first noticed when I went to Egypt, the first time I ever went to Egypt and saw the Sphinx, I said to myself, actually I said out loud, that the head is too small for the body. That's because that is not the original head. That human dynastic head is a recarved head. Originally it was a lioness. Something else you can look for is that as you look at the body of the Sphinx, go along the sides of it, both the north and south sides, and you will see it's sort of filled in with cement now, but the Sphinx's body at one point was actually cracked through. There's a fissure going through it, and this is probably, I'm convinced, because the Sphinx was hit by lightning, quote, lightning, unquote. But we're not talking about atmospheric lightning. We're talking about a plasma strike during the solar outburst that ended the last ice age. And on something known as the inventory stela, which was found at Giza, there's actually an inscription that talks about Khufu, the person who supposedly built the Great Pyramid, or had the Great Pyramid built, that he venerated the Sphinx, that the Sphinx was much, much older than his reign, and that he went to see the thunderbolt that hit the Sphinx, and that lightning or a thunderbolt had hit the Sphinx. You can still see evidence of that if you know what you're looking at.
Can I ask you about
things? I'm giving you a few highlights.
Let me ask you
about.
about.
Go with you and just show you on site.
Man.
We talk about it at length.
Well, we might be able to arrange that. Now, let me ask you this about the inventory stela. Doesn't it? Now, first off, that isn't for public consumption anymore, right? They've got that locked up on the plateau in a box.
I could not find it. I think the last time I was in Egypt. When I said last time I was in Egypt, last time I was looking for it in the old Egyptian museum, and I say the old Egyptian museum because they are now moving things through. They're moving things to the new Egyptian museum.
Right.
In fact, I forget when, a couple months ago, they had this big parade where they took the pharaohs, and it was, I hate to say it, almost gaudy, but
it was
the
lit up.
Egyptians,
It was
frankly,
lit up.
were gaudy by our standards. All the temples and whatnot were painted with bright colors. I mean, they didn't look like they look now. Originally, they were all painted.
Back to
very,
the
very bright colors.
But back to the inventory stela.
The last time I saw the inventory stela was a few years ago, and then it was taken off of display.
But
and
this
I
is
don't
my
know where it is right now.
But this is my question, Robert. Doesn't the inventory stela indicate that Khufu showed up and the Great Sphinx was already there and the pyramid was already there? He was there to do repairs.
He was there to do repairs to a very ancient Great Sphinx. Absolutely. That's what the inventory said. That's what the inventory stela says, in no uncertain terms, that he was repairing a very ancient Sphinx, and it explicitly, as I just was pointing out, talks about a huge thunderbolt, which I think was, plasma strike. Plasma being electrically charged particles thrown off by the sun that hit Earth. We have the evidence of this around the world. We have petroglyphs that show that people observed this in the sky. This is recorded on Easter Island with the Rongo. We have what's known as vitrification, where rock was hit by these electrical discharges, incredibly powerful electrical discharges that melted the surface rock, and then it formed a glassy casing, essentially, a glassy sheet on the surface of the rock. We see that right on the Giza Plateau. If I don't know if you'll be able to find it, but if you look in Forgotten Civilization, you've got a copy of the new edition, and I am flipping through it right now to find it. There is a picture of the inventory stela on page 337, and two views of me showing some of the vitrified rock from a plasma strike on the Giza Plateau.
I'm looking for it right now. Now, what about
page 337?
Now, what about? Yeah, I can't. Man, I'm going to do this for everybody. I got to put on my glasses. I just can't do it. You see here? Oh,
don't worry. We all have these
Yeah,
issues.
man, I'm old. 337.
No, you're not old. You're not old. Eartha Man, he's old. And look how well he's doing. That's a good 12,000 years.
Yeah, that's the reason why they kept they're keeping the inventory Stella away from prying eyes. But there it is right there on page 337.
That's a picture I took of it when it was still available to see, and I took lots of close-ups of it. It's not very impressive just to see as an art object, but the inscriptions on it and what it says and what it means, that is incredibly impressive.
Now, what about the Great Pyramid? What is it that I need to go, if you're going to guide me, what do I need to take note of inside of the Great Pyramid?
Make sure you make sure you see everything you can in the Great Pyramid. So typically people see the Grand Gallery, the King's Chamber. You can't miss those. But if you have the opportunity, make sure you go into the Queen's Chamber. And if you have the opportunity, definitely go down to the subterranean chamber, also known as the Pit. That is actually my favorite place in the Great Pyramid. It's well down into the bedrock under the Great Pyramid. It's probably the oldest portion of the structure that we now call the Great Pyramid. I believe that they carved out that subterranean chamber first, and the Great Pyramid was built over it. The Great Pyramid was probably built in stages, the earliest stages going well back before the time of Khufu and etc. Khufu probably adopted an earlier structure, maybe rebuilt parts of it. This is my interpretation.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense.
So yes, it was used during dynastic times, but its origins go back much earlier. Likewise, the second pyramid, when you go to see it, notice that around the base of the second pyramid, there is a granite ring. There's granite around the base. There's a layer of granite around the base. Well, what does this indicate? This indicates that the ancient dynastic Egyptians were restoring, they were refurbishing an older structure. You'll see the same thing at the so-called Valley Temple, which is right next to the Sphinx Temple, how that was refaced, recovered with granite. The older limestone temple was being reused and refurbished close to 5,000 years ago, but the point is that the actual temple goes back to a much earlier period by thousands of years. So throughout Egypt, if you know what you're looking at and you know what you're looking for, you can see how these structures were used and reused, and some of them, we are convinced, when I say we, Katie and I are convinced, go back to that earlier cycle of civilization. The Egyptians were inheriting things. They were reusing things that were already thousands of years old, the Great Sphinx being the most obvious and the best known of the very ancient structures they were reusing.
Now, what is your belief about Khafre and the interior of that pyramid? Do you think there's much to be discovered there, that it could be just as elegant on the inside as the Great Pyramid?
Yeah, there's probably more in the Khafre pyramid, the second pyramid, just so everyone knows what we're talking about.
The middle.
Which is the pyramid that's directly behind the Sphinx, more or less directly west of the Sphinx. There's very little right now in the sense of chambers and passages, but there could well be a lot more in there, and I will not be surprised if eventually we find it. Just like with the muography that was made the news, and I don't know if you and I have talked about that, but the muography that was used to find this huge chamber, which has still not been explored, above the Grand Gallery in the Great Pyramid.
What do you the subterranean chamber? What is that there for? Does it have anything to do with the Great Pyramid, or is this just an attempt at an earlier temple site, and then they came in and just built the Great Pyramid on top?
No. Well, yes and no. The subterranean chamber under the Great Pyramid is part of the Great Pyramid interior complex at this point, but it's well down in the bedrock under what was a natural hill or knoll in the bedrock. The entire Giza Plateau was probably hit by, quote, lightning, more or less a solar outburst 12,000 or close to 12,000 years ago. That's probably in large part why it's a sacred site. In fact, what we find, and I talk about this in Forgotten Civilization, is that a lot of the sacred sites around the world may be sacred sites or may have been considered sacred sites because they were hit by plasma outbursts, by solar outbursts. This is literally where the sun, which was equated with God, and I talk about that in the book, equated with God, where God touched the earth, if you would, in a literal sense. So this may be what's happening at Giza, and specifically at the site of the Great Pyramid. That's why they carved or maybe enlarged what was a natural chamber in the rock. It was probably a very important sacred, is sort of the best term we have for it in our modern language, site. And it's because it was an important sacred site that the Great Pyramid was built on top of it. It's not that it's just, was something earlier and the Great Pyramid happened to be built in the same place. No, they all are integrated together. And sacred sites around the world are genuine. You can't just put up a pyramid anywhere and then dub it sacred, or put up a temple anywhere and dub it a sacred site. Will you go down to? Will you be down to the Aswan region?
Yeah, we're going to go to Aswan. We're going to do 7 days on the Nile. We're going to do it all. We're going to go to Aswan. We're going to go to Edfu. Of course, we're going to do Luxor. So yeah,
Are you going to go to Philae? Do you know if you'll go to Philae, the Temple of Isis?
Yes, I believe we are going to the Temple of Isis. We are also all of the Seti 1, Seti 2, and all of that. Abydos. Yeah, all of that is on.
Yeah, because the reason I bring it up is because if you go to the Temple of Isis, it's very interesting. The Temple of Isis at Philae was actually moved. It was actually moved because of the dam, the Aswan High Dam,
right?
Which it would have been totally submerged underwater. So they moved it to higher ground. But many studies have indicated that the sacred site is the site underwater. Where it was moved to higher ground. Okay, now the temple's there, the superstructure, etc., but it's sort of lost its, how should we say, vitality as a actual temple, if that makes any sense.
Oh, it does make sense. And you know what? One of the funny, it's a comedic film that I watched. It was the documentary about them moving that temple because they couldn't do it. Man, I could not believe all of the biggest cranes and machinery and engineering and these great minds.
It's amazing. And yeah, what they did, and they still, I don't want to be critical, but they did not get it quite right.
No, they did not. It's comedy, and if you ever wanted proof of how difficult it is for us to do it with all of the hydraulics, right, that we have today, all of the knowledge that we have today, and they didn't pull that off, and they almost didn't pull it off at all.
Exactly.
Now,
I wanted to mention something else while we're thinking of it, because we mentioned astronomy and that type of thing before. Gobekli Tepe, and I talk about this in Forgotten Civilization, it has alignments, and they were looking at precession, which is incredibly sophisticated. So 12,000 years ago, they knew about things, very subtle astronomical alignments and changes that classic historians said were not known until a mere 2,200 years ago. Yet they knew about 12,000 years ago. When you look at the Great Pyramid and the second pyramid, the Khufu Pyramid and the Khafra Pyramid, they are beautifully aligned. I mean, to the level of precision that we could not calculate how well aligned they were until the late 19th, early 20th century, because it was not until about 100 or 150 years ago that we had good enough instrumentation to realize how perfectly aligned the pyramids are to true north, for instance.
One of the best examples of engineering when it comes to the Giza Plateau. Yes, okay, yeah, they built 3 big ass pyramids. Obviously nice, but you know what? That Robert, that's not what impresses me the most. What impresses me the most is they understood that they had to have a level base. They leveled off that hilltop.
Yeah.
They then brought in the stones to build the base that would support the stones, mathematically correct, level, obviously to true north. Okay, so all of that is, but they had to have that knowledge of how to build the foundation to support the weight of 2.5 million stones.
Exactly, because this is not trivial at all. No. And also the siting of the Great Pyramid and the other pyramids, people sort of don't think about usually when they're there, but exactly where they set them, I think, was determined by other things than practical considerations. And I've spoken to a number of engineers who said, if you just took the Giza Plateau and you picked the best engineering spot as to where to set down a big pyramid, it would not be where the Great Pyramid is today. It would not be where the second pyramid is today. And I'm sure the Egyptians knew that, but they took those spots anyway because those were the spots they needed, because those were, we'll use the term sacred, those were the sacred spots, and they worked around
the disadvantages.
To put the pyramids where they are, which was an even more amazing engineering feat, taking into account that these were not the ideal spots initially from engineering. Am I making sense?
Oh, I've been arguing about this for so long, but nobody will listen. That's why you and I need to be the new team. Let me ask you this. I'm very confused about one thing. If we back up to 2700 BC, the alleged construction date. Okay, I'm using the word alleged, but if we go to Aswan and we get a series of 75-ton red granite blocks to build the relieving chambers above the king's chamber, right? Okay. How did they get
so you know, I did not mention you seeing the relieving chambers because I don't think there's any chance they would let you get up there.
Oh, man.
I've been up there 3 times, but
it's pretty claustrophobic.
Let people up there, and then there was a whole hubbub about the cartouche and it being damaged, etc. And the last I heard, no one's going up there.
Yeah.
But go ahead.
That ended up in court.
Actually, it did. Some of my photographs ended up in court.
Yeah.
Defending some of the Egyptians.
Now, okay, but let's back up. How do you get a 75-ton granite block across the Nile River? They didn't have a boat big enough. It would sink. Anything. How do you get it from Aswan across the Nile? Not 500 miles north.
The classic explanation is that you had these huge barges. But
where?
It's not a very good explanation.
No. Where?
It's not just a granite blocks for the relieving chambers, but the obelisks. I mean, the obelisks are even larger. How do you move those things around? How do you set them
I'm
in
asking
upright
you.
Position, etc.? It's boggles the mind.
You're the Yale University Ph.D., not me. I'm asking you, how did they get those across the Nile?
When you go to better colleges and universities, you sometimes actually learn that you don't know everything because we don't know everything, and you have to admit that in some cases we don't know. We don't know. I mean this seriously. I mean this really seriously. I often will try to get the lesson across to my students that if someone always thinks they have the right answer and they just tell you very quickly, oh, this is how they did it in ancient times, or this is how they did, they probably don't know what they're really talking about. Because in most cases, or not in most cases necessarily, but in many cases, depending on the subject, we don't actually know.
I mean, I just can't picture. When you look, somebody can go right now and Google boat that has a 75-ton displacement. Go look at the size of that boat, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's
exactly.
big.
Exactly.
75 tons. It would sink. It would sink.
Exactly.
It would sink.
And you're not talking one 75-ton block. You're talking numerous blocks that you would have to move. And as I said, you've got obelisks that are,
10 times the size.
75 tons that they moved around.
10 times
and
the size.
Not only moving them down the Nile, but that's the easy part. The harder part is to take them out of the quarry.
Somebody just explain to me like I'm 4 years old. Just tell me how they got this done without the wheel, right? They didn't have wood. All the wood that would have to have come from like Lebanon, right? I mean,
yeah. No, I mean they had a certain amount of wood, but not the amount that you would expect for doing such things.
No, and I'm
just and there
confused.
is no, and seriously, there, because I don't want to be misrepresent. The suggestion is that yes, they had wood, and they would reuse that same wood over and over again. So in some cases, you find fragments of wood in certain contexts, and the wood is much older than the context seems to indicate. In some cases, it may be because they were, quote, using the wood for so long, using, I was going to say using, quote, ancient wood. But that gets very controversial, too. How long can you use a piece of wood? How long will it stand up to, abuse, basically, with such heavy weights, etc. It's a real issue.
I did some basic math. I don't have a calculator in front of me, but so you've got 450, 500 miles from Aswan through the desert up to Giza. Now let's say they built a rope bridge or they had barges and somehow they got this stuff across over into the Sahara. But now you've got and they're saying that they had sleds and they dragged it through the desert. Okay, a 75-ton block.
But wait, you don't need to drag very far through the desert because both sites are, relatively close to the Nile. But it's still a problem.
But okay, but what I am suggesting here is that some Egyptologists say that they put the relieving stones on sledges and then drag them up to Giza. Now, if you...
I know. Try dragging a sledge through the sand and over the stone, etc., and then they have little pictures where they were pouring milk or oil under the sledge to lubricate it. It gets a little bizarre.
Well, so I did some math, and if you moved a 75-ton stone a foot an hour... Right, a foot an hour, a foot an hour, and that's pretty good. 75 tons.
You're going fast.
You're going fast. It's like 420 years.
They lived a long time. They were very patient.
Cleopatra was watching them place those relieving stones. So yeah, I mean, the more that I think about it, and the more that I apply. Oh, there's one that I know it's getting late. Is Katie up? By the way.
Yeah, she's up. She's right here.
Okay, bring Katie in.
Bring Katie in.
Yeah, I want to say hi to Katie before we say goodnight.
You want to see? Yeah.
Oh.
Wait. I'll get her to come over. Come over, Katie.
Katie, get over here.
Here, I'm going to put her on the phone.
This is great live radio right here.
Here. Wait. Just say hello.
Hi, Jimmy. I've got headphones on, and I'm watching you on Facebook.
Oh, that's so cool.
It's a little bit of a time lag. I've got one ear on Robert and one ear on you, and my brain is short-circuiting.
How you doing, baby sister? Is everything good?
Oh, everything is great. You guys are having a wonderful conversation tonight. It's a lot of fun.
I just miss you, and I don't know when we're going to be able to hang out again, but we've got to do it soon. And I just wanted to say hello, okay?
Oh, thank you. A warm hello back.
Thank you so much, Katie. Now go behave. Thank you.
Okay, here, I'll put Robert back on.
Right on. Now,
there you talk.
Okay.
There she is.
Yeah, but this goes a step further for me. I've done the math. Khafre and Khufu, depending on where you go, and the dates vary, but there are some sites, academic sites, and I'm not going to say Wikipedia, I'm saying outside of that date Khufu and Khafre as being constructed at the same time. 2650, right? 2600. Now, how when Egyptologists want us to believe that the Great Pyramid was built in 20 years by 20,000 workers with 2.5 million cut stones, right? That what they don't want to tell you is that the two were built at the same time, and it wasn't 2.5 million stones. It was 5 million. It wasn't 20,000 workers. It was 40,000. And the other part is the population of Egypt during that period, wherever you want to go and look, was somewhere between 500,000 and 700,000 people in the entire country, which would mean that every able-bodied male in the country was building those pyramids. Who was defending?
They were quite well organized. They were quite dedicated, weren't they?
It doesn't.
They just all lockstep. Oh, Pharaoh says this, we'll do this. Pharaoh says that, we'll do that. No, I'm joking, of course.
Yeah, I know, but I get it, right? The numbers don't support the dogma.
No, they really don't. And that's why I think, and now I'm being serious, so many of these structures, they go back to an earlier period, or parts of them go back to an earlier period. They were not even multi-generational, but multi-civilizational. What I mean by that is that they were inheriting, I'm convinced more and more, that so many of these structures were inherited from an earlier period in some form. They were being rebuilt, they were being reused. So again, I gave you the example of the Khafre pyramid, where I feel very confident that the dynastic Egyptians, the second pyramid, the Khafre pyramid, they had some structure there that they were refurbishing, rebuilding, however you'd like to describe it, but they weren't starting from scratch.
How do we fight the system on this? I know that you have been, and we don't have John Anthony West to, and I miss him so much. But how?
I was going to say sometimes he gave me more trouble than not me personally, but he liked to attack conventional academia, which didn't always go over well, should we say, with academia.
But how do we fight the system? I mean,
I think it's really a matter of what I was saying earlier this evening. My approach, at least, is to really just keep developing the evidence, the hardcore evidence that eventually becomes so overwhelming that they cannot ignore it. So I think that's number one. I'll use Gobekli Tepe as example and the Sphinx as example. When I first started this with the Sphinx back in 1990, 1991, no one wanted to hear about it. No one wanted to listen to it in academia. But and they thought I would just go away. They thought it was, they'd get rid of me. As I told that story about, I should go look at rocks somewhere else. The Egyptologists would tell me that, but you have to be persistent. You have to keep developing the evidence. And one of the points of the new edition of Forgotten Civilization is that so much more evidence, supporting, corroborating evidence, has come out since I first began working on this. So much more evidence has come out just in the last 10 years, supporting the big picture of ancient civilization going back to a much, much earlier period and being much more sophisticated.
It has to be that way, and I would suspect, as we say goodnight here, that the up and coming Egyptologists, they are exposed to this knowledge. The knowledge now, because before it was controlled. You can control it, but now it's a different world. And
it's a different world, and you can expose it, expose the knowledge. I'm choking here. Expose the information. I'm just choking, not choking over the knowledge. Expose the information more readily. There's more outlets to get this information out. But you also have to be careful because there's also more outlets for misinformation. Katie actually just reminded me about something else. When you're in Egypt and you're on the Giza Plateau, do not miss the mortuary temple of the second pyramid.
Oh,
it's actually very important. Okay. It's on the. It's just above the Sphinx. It's between the Sphinx and the second pyramid. So the mortuary temple, you will see it is built out of gargantuan limestone blocks, not unlike the Valley and Sphinx temples. But this is an example of one of the structures that we are convinced goes back to a much earlier period and was then adopted by the dynastic Egyptians. And they rebuilt parts of it, reused it again. And it's this type of evidence that we have to keep building up to the point where the evidence is so overwhelming that the conventional status quo archaeologists and Egyptologists, they just cannot ignore it. They've been trying to ignore Gobekli Tepe. And not talk about it or downplay it and say, well, it was only built by hunter-gatherers. But we talked about that before. How was this just simple hunter-gatherers? It doesn't make sense.
Robert, thank you so much.
There's a lot of issues. Oh, I want to mention, can I mention one other thing?
You can say whatever you want.
Okay, we were talking about how you convince a new generation. Mm-hmm. Katie actually has begun a series for children.
What?
It's called Adriana's Ancient Mysteries.
What? Where's this? Where can I find it?
Well, this is the thing. In the first book is The Great Sphinx. It's a children's book, children's series introducing the ancient mysteries. It's just recent. It's been published in German translation so far. We've got other serious, people looking at seriously. We're looking for appropriate English publisher for it. A series of children's books about the ancient mysteries coming from our perspective. So I think that's another way you start to influence a new generation, get them thinking about this early.
Now, what's the title of it again?
Adriana's Ancient Mysteries, and the first book is The Great Sphinx.
And I'm looking at it right here.
Are you? Yeah, we don't have an English publisher yet, but you're looking at, where are you looking at it?
I'm looking at it on Google.
On Google?
Yeah.
If you go to our website, www.robertschoch.com, ROBERTSCHOCH.com, and then you will see a link to it on the first page. Correct, Katie?
Oh man, I love live radio. I love live
You
radio.
see that?
I am there right now, and there it is, our children's series.
And you can see you.
Yeah, this is what I saw.
You see the cover to the book?
Yeah, this is what I saw on Google. It's in German. Yes.
Yes, it's in German. It's been published in Germany, and German translation. We have other publishers around the world looking at it. It's a publishing business. It's difficult, but the German publisher took it right away. But it's part of getting the new message out. And
man, this is
we're
great.
Looking into getting an English publisher. So.
I love the illustrations.
This is another way to really, I would say, influence the next generation. And this is interesting because there are different ways to approach things. And the way I would describe this is this will be a series of books once we really get launched for not just children, but for adults and children. So adults can have resources to share with their younger children to introduce them to these new things. And to use my own story, if you don't mind, I was maybe susceptible, should we say, to thinking a bit outside the box, because when I was very young, I had a grandmother who's now long deceased, and she talked to me about ancient civilizations, and we would read and discuss things, and she was much more open-minded, should we say, than most academics are nowadays, considering the possibilities that maybe civilization went back to an earlier period. So it's something I was introduced to the concept at a young age, and I do think that was beneficial for me to be open-minded enough to look at real evidence rather than simply shutting down.
These illustrations are really, really good. Lisa Perkins.
Yeah, aren't they beautiful? Those were done by Lisa Perkins, who is a friend of ours, who is, as you can see, a very good artist and teaches art in California. So, yeah, I think we have an incredible book, and we just have to find the correct publisher for it in English, as well as we'd like to get it in other languages as well. And as I said, we've got people reading it in various publishing houses around the world to see where we can get placed.
Yeah, this is really cool. The little girl standing in Gobekli Tepe. That's
exactly. Don't you like
awesome.
that?
It's
Looking
awesome.
up at the pillar.
Yes, that is just awesome. The Great Sphinx, the pyramids.
Yeah, exactly.
This is really cool.
So if any of your listeners read German, read German, it's out in German already. We'd love for people to start circulating it. And as I said, we're looking into publishers for English and other languages. But again, I think it ties in with what we were talking about. How do we get this information out? How do we change the way people think about it? And I put a lot of faith in the younger generation.
Yeah, I do too. This is a great idea, and the illustrations are just, really, really cool. It's not just for kids. This is really cool to look at.
It really isn't. The way I view it, and I don't want to speak for Katie here, but the way I view it, it's really a book for adults to share with children, more or less children and adults sitting, reading it together, discussing these really neat topics, because we have found that children, and when I've taken groups to Egypt and to Ireland and to other places, to Turkey. In some cases, children have come with their parents. And I will tell you that, a 12-year-old or whatever, or a 10-year-old, they really get into this, and they are really fascinated and ask really great questions. They have great questions. They're thinking about it. So I love that when you have the young children really sparked intellectually what they're seeing. And they love it.
Well, I can only relate to, I think we all went through this at a young age. I mean, the first time that I saw, King Tut's gold sarcophagus, and you look at that, and there's something in our DNA. There's something that connects us with that immediately, where we identify. First off, it's amazing artwork, right? There's an artisan that created probably the most perfect gold sculpture in the history of everything. But there's something that you connect with, and I've always connected with Egypt. And I don't know what it is. I can't wait to get there in March, but I think all of us feel this connection, and I think it's there. I think it's part of our DNA.
Yeah, it's like a primordial connection. It's funny you say that, because I can remember, one of the things I can remember, I think I was about 4 years old. I was born in D.C. and grew up in Washington, D.C. area. And I remember that traveling exhibition of material from Tutankhamun, King Tut's tomb, came through. I must have been at the National Gallery of Art, I suspect. I just don't remember off the top of my head now. But I remember, I think I was maybe around 4 years old, so that's pretty young. And I remember being fascinated by seeing this exhibition of Tutankhamun that had come. Now, they did not include the gold mask because, that was probably too valuable, etc. But I remember very specifically, for instance, this beautiful embroidered glove from Tutankhamun, and other things. It's like you say, it's primordial, maybe.
Yeah, and it was also Boris Karloff. He had a lot to do with it too, as well. Boris Karloff. Thank you so much for staying up and staying late, and say goodnight to Katie for me too, as well. And before I do say goodnight, what is next, though? What is it that you're working on?
Well, right now we want to get out of this pandemic, of course, and I mentioned that when you say what is next. We're working on the children's series. Katie's working on that. I am working on another book, a follow-up book, but I'm not going to give you more information about that right now because I'm working on it, and I tend to like to keep quiet till it's at a certain stage. Something else that we're working on, and I think we've talked about this before, but it really got put on hold, is that we have a project going with Oracle, the Organization for the Research of Ancient Cultures, which is a not-for-profit, and we are working on a documentary, professional documentary called Civilization Before Civilization. And we were working on filming that before the pandemic broke out. In fact, we had just gotten back from Turkey doing some filming. We were in New York City. This is late January 2020. And of course, it was just after that the pandemic really started breaking, and we've just had to put everything on hold since then. But it is interesting. I wanted to mention, the Mystery of the Sphinx. Mystery of the Sphinx, the NBC documentary, which John Anthony West and I were in. That was directed by Bill Cody, who has remained a close friend ever since, and he is involved with this project. So we reassembled some of the team from Mystery of the Sphinx to do Civilization Before Civilization. So we're very excited about that. But things have been on hold because of the pandemic, and also, to be really blunt, money's been difficult, especially with the pandemic, and people have been having a hard time, and I understand that, and we're dependent on donations as a not-for-profit for this documentary. So, but we're pushing forward with it. Once we can get going again post-pandemic, or when things get more settled, we will. We're absolutely committed to it. We'll be posting more updates about that.
Yeah, over at robertschoch.com, there is an Oracle section there. You can click on that, and you can also go straight to the Oracle website too as well, which is oracleonline.org. And the projects page is there too as well. So thank you so much, Robert.
And we have a little trailer for it if people want to get a little sense of it. Yeah.
Yeah, the trailer's here, and it's Civilization Before Civilization. And there's Earth Man right there in the trailer, and everybody go and check it out. Thank you so much, Robert, and we've got to get together as soon as possible. Thank you so much, my friend.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's been a pleasure. It's always wonderful speaking with you.
You're the best, Robert, and say goodnight to Katie for me.
I will. Thank you.
Robert Schoch, everybody. It's very simple. It's robertschoch.com, and the links are over at jimmychurchradio.com. And go ahead and click through. The children's book is there too as well, but so is Oracle and the current project, which is the documentary Civilization Before Civilization. And so with that, I want to remind everybody what is going on tomorrow night. If you have bought tickets for Making Contact, then that means you've probably gone and got your avatar built up and you're ready to go. If you haven't done that yet, I want everybody to go over to makingcontact.com. The promo code is JimmySave100. That'll get you $100 off of the ticket price. Ticket price is $249. It's a 5-day event, but that means you'll get it for $149. I want you to do that now so you can get your avatar built, because tomorrow night we're going to broadcast from the island, Fade to Black, Fader Night, and you'll be able to just come and hang out with me in the auditorium. It's the Paul Hellyer Auditorium there on the Making Contact campus. It's all right there. Okay, so I've got the links up. I want everybody to go do it, makingcontact.com, because we're going to broadcast Fade to Black tomorrow night from the auditorium, and it's really cool. I want everybody to go and see what is going on. This is an amazing project. With that, I am going to get out of here. I want to thank Robert Schoch. What another great night and conversation with him. It's all simple to do. It's robertschoch.com. The links are over at jimmychurchradio.com. You've got to get yourself your copy of Forgotten Civilization, the new revised and expanded edition, new images, and of course, Katie is a part of this too as well. All right. What a great night. I'll see everybody tomorrow. Fade to Black is produced by Hilton J. Palm, Renee, Dennis, and Kevin. Announcers are Steve Harder, Gene Vitola, Mark T. Kovar. Webmaster is Drew the Geek. Music, Doug Aldridge. Intro, Spaceboy, spaceboymusic.com. Fade to Black is produced by KJCR for the Game Changer Network, and syndication is KGRA, The Planet. It's broadcast owned and copyrighted 2021 by Fade to Black and the Game Changer Network, Inc. It cannot be rebroadcast, downloaded, copied, or used anywhere in the known universe without written permission from Fade to Black or the Game Changer Network. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. I'll see everybody right here tomorrow night for Fader Night. Until then, I want everybody to be safe. It's time to fade to black.